Chapter 438. Mo Yezi was willing to help Luo Feiheng without any misgivings because he treated Luo Feiheng like a daughter. Ever since he forged the Iris Spear and gave it to Luo Feiheng, his attitude towards Luo Feiheng was even better than his own son. Moreover, Mo Yezi's situation was just as he said. With his status and connections, he wasn't afraid of the Luo clan or the Shangshuaying clan. The same went for Xie Xiaolu. The World Alliance was far away in West Chu, and with Chen Qingdi's dominance, why would he need to be afraid of others? As for Chu Xiu, Luo Feiheng could be considered a good friend and a member of the Nine Halls. In terms of benefits, Luo Feiheng definitely wouldn't be an ordinary person in the future. It wasn't easy for her to establish the Bu-Air Palace and stand tall in the world as a woman. If he helped her now, Chu Xiu wouldn't suffer in the future. Mo Tianlin had the most misgivings because the Mo clan wasn't strong, and was only in Eastern Qi. Moreover, his position as the successor of the Mo clan wasn't stable. There were many disciples in the Mo clan who weren't convinced by him, and were always eyeing his position. Just when Mo Tianlin wanted to say something, Luo Feiheng spoke first. Alright Mo Tianlin, I know your situation. Don't force yourself. Don't get involved in this matter. Hearing Luo Feiheng's words, Mo Tianlin raised his eyebrows and said, What do you mean by force? I'm clearly very strong, okay? Don't talk about this matter anymore. I'm really going to get involved. Mo Tianlin wasn't a righteous person like Lu Fengxian, but he wasn't a cold-blooded person who would watch his friend get into trouble. In any case, Mo Tianlin had already thought it through. Even if the matter really got out of hand, as the most outstanding disciple of the Mo clan, he wouldn't be crippled or punished. At most, he would be scolded or punished to face the wall. Mo Tianlin could bear it. As for other troubles, he could deal with it later. After Luo Feiheng thanked him, he didn't exchange any more pleasantries. At this moment, footsteps could be heard from outside. Luo Tianyang came in with some people and said, Alright, you've met him. The marriage contest is about to begin. Everyone, please go to the front. Luo Tianyang looked at Luo Feiheng with a complicated look in his eyes and said, Feiheng, you go with him. Remember, don't cause trouble again. Otherwise, I won't be able to protect you if the old ancestor gets angry. As a father, it wouldn't be right to say that Luo Tianyang didn't have any feelings for Luo Feiheng. However, Luo Feiheng's position in Luo Tianyang's heart couldn't be compared to Luo Feiyun's. Luo Tianyang even wondered why Luo Feiheng didn't have such a powerful talent, and not Luo Feiyun. Luo Tianyang's strength and talent weren't good enough, so he hoped that his son would become a dragon. Therefore he used all his strength on Luo Feiyun. Unfortunately, Luo Feiyun wasn't good compared to the experts of the small sects or rogue cultivators. However, Luo Feiyun wasn't on the same level as the young geniuses of the big sections. Even so, Luo Tianyang still spoiled Luo Feiyun. Therefore, when Luo Feiheng crippled Luo Feiheng, Luo Tianyang lost his mind in anger, and severely injured Luo Feiheng. However, he regretted it afterwards. When Luo Jionian and the other elders of the Luo clan were preparing to punish Luo Feiheng, Luo Tianyang spoke a few words to help him. Otherwise, Luo Feiheng wouldn't be sitting here leisurely eating sunflower seeds and reading romantic novels. Luo Feiheng walked out without saying a word. This surprised Luo Tianyang. The people of the Luo clan didn't allow Chu Xiu and the others to see Luo Feiheng, because they were afraid that she would cause trouble with her character. However, because of Mo Yezi, the Luo clan let them in. Naturally, they didn't need to lock Luo Feiheng anymore. However, Luo Tianyang and the others were also prepared for Luo Feiheng to cause trouble. Who would have thought that Luo Feiheng would be so quiet this time? This made Luo Tianyang a little uncomfortable. Could it be that his daughter has already accepted her fate? Luo Tianyang chased after Luo Feiheng and tried to persuade her. Daughter, it's not that I'm cruel, but you've gone too far this time. No matter what, Feiyun is still your brother. How could you do this to him? Luo Feiheng glanced at him and said in an emotionless voice, He wants to sell me to the Ying clan of Shang River. Isn't this too much? Luo Tianyang frowned. How can a marriage between two clans be sold? Moreover, it's not like you don't know who Ying Bailu is. He's ranked 5th on the Longhu list and the successor of the Ying clan of Shang River. He's destined to become a giant in the future. Do you know how many women in the world want to marry Bailu? Now that you have this opportunity, you don't cherish it. You don't know that even this opportunity was begged by the Luo clan. Luo Feiheng looked at Luo Tianyang coldly and said, "What if I say that I'll be stronger than Bailu in the future?" Luo Tianyang smiled and didn't say anything. What kind of existence was a giant in the Jianghu? Only those who could create chaos in the Jianghu could be called a giant in the Jianghu. Even among the 9 great clans, there were only a few who could be called a giant in the Jianghu. The patriarch of the Luo clan didn't count, nor did the patriarch of the Mo clan. The patriarch of the Xiahou clan could barely be considered one, but the patriarch of the Ying clan of Shang River was a true giant in the Jianghu. Based on the talent and potential that Bailu had displayed, he was stronger than the previous patriarchs of the Ying clan of Shang River. His future achievements were almost predictable. Now that Luo Feiheng said these words, even a man would be dreaming, let alone a woman. Chu Xiu didn't say anything because he knew how great Luo Feiheng's future achievements would be. For the Luo clan to give up on a giant in the Jianghu for the support of a giant in the Jianghu was enough to make the people of the Jianghu laugh about it for decades. Of course, for the Luo clan, they thought that they had made a wise decision. When they arrived at the courtyard of the Luo clan, there were already thousands of martial artists sitting in the courtyard. Some of them were martial artists from various forces, and some were young talents with some fame in the Jianghu. Of course, most of them were martial artists who came to watch the show. However, these people didn't even have a seat, so they could only watch the show from the edge of the courtyard or outside. When they saw Luo Feiheng come out, there was a commotion among these people. In fact, in all fairness, Luo Feiheng could be considered a stunning beauty in the Jianghu. If she were to change into a woman's clothes and dress up a little, she would look like a beautiful woman sitting there. She wouldn't be inferior to Yan Fian, who was one of the 4 great beauties of the Jianghu. It was a pity that once she opened her mouth, coupled with her personality, she would directly destroy the mood and lose a lot of points. For people like Mo Tianlin, he had known Luo Feiheng for a long time, and didn't see her as a woman at all. Of course, in the eyes of those who didn't have much contact with Luo Feiheng, this young lady of the Luo clan was quite good. She had both looks and strength. She was really a good match for Bailu of the Ying clan of Shangshui. After taking their seats, Luo Feiheng naturally sat with the people of the Luo clan, while Chu Xiu and the others sat below. Mo Tianlin looked around and said strangely, "The people of the Ying clan of Shangshui are not here yet?" Xie Xiaolu said lightly, "Big shots are usually the last to appear. Wouldn't it be shameful to come first? Besides, this time, the Luo clan is in a hurry to unite with the Ying clan through marriage, and there's no definite news yet. Of course, the Ying clan won't be so proactive." However, at this time the old ancestor of the Luo clan, Luo Jionian, suddenly went out to welcome some people. This made everyone feel a little strange. Which big shot is it this time? Although the Luo clan had declined, Luo Jionian was a genuine martial arts grandmaster. Those who could make him go out to welcome them in person were certainly not ordinary people. There were more than 10 people who were personally welcomed by Luo Jionian. Among them, the 2 leading people were very conspicuous. One of them was a handsome and masculine young man in a white luxurious robe. He wore a jade crown on his head and held a folding fan in his hand. Beside him was an old eunuch in a purple robe. The old eunuch's cultivation base was at the unity of heaven and man level. Chu Xiu asked Mo Tianlin, "Who are they? Are they from the Eastern Qi imperial family?" Mo Tianlin said in a low voice, "They are people from the Eastern Qi Crown Prince LV Longji. That young man is Li Yuan, the only son of the Eastern Qi's Lin Duke Li Rang. The Lin Duke has always supported the Crown Prince, so Li Yuan has been with the Crown Prince since he was a child. He can be considered as the Crown Prince's confidant. And that old eunuch is LV Longji's personal eunuch, Chen Do. He is also his confidant. LV Longji is giving face to the Luo clan by sending 2 of his confidants here." Hearing Mo Tianlin's introduction of the 2 people, Chu Xiu's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Between the 2 people, Chu Xiu had never heard of the old eunuch, but Li Yuan would become a big shot in the Eastern Qi imperial court in the future. He was the heavenly king Li Yuan. This person used to be the northern general of Eastern Qi. and later was conferred the title of Northern King. His status was even higher than his father's. In the later years, when the Eastern Qi's national power declined and was counterattacked by the Northern Yan, it was Li Yuan who presided over the northern lands of Eastern Qi and resisted the Northern Yan. He was definitely one of the top officials in Eastern Qi, but that was more than 20 years later. At this time, Li Yuan was only LV Longji's confidant. He had an idle position in the Eastern Qi imperial court. It was just an ordinary small official, so it seemed very ordinary. Moreover, the background of Li Yuan's rise was also very interesting. He was originally a member of the imperial court, but when he was traveling in Jianghu, he was suddenly chosen by an eminent monk from the western regions. The monk insisted that he was his destined successor, and before he died he passed his cultivation to Li Yuan, causing Li Yuan to soar. From a seemingly inconspicuous noble of Eastern Qi, he later became an important minister of Eastern Qi, the Northern King, and the Great General. Chapter 439. Heavenly King Li Yuan, whose name would shake the world after more than 20 years, seemed very ordinary at this time. However, his strength was not weak at this time. He also had the cultivation of 5 qis collecting an origin. But he was slightly older, looking like he was in his 30s. His father, Duke Lin, was a hereditary duke. In fact, in his generation, the family had actually declined. Li Yuan's ancestors were martial arts grandmasters, but his father had only cultivated to the oneness of heaven and man state at this age. Li Yuan, on the other hand, had already shown good talent at a young age. However, even if Duke Lin's mansion tried their best, they could not let Li Yuan stand shoulder to shoulder with the outstanding talents on the Longhu list. The so-called Duke's public house sounded very famous, but in reality, after declining for so long, its foundation was not even comparable to a small faction. Therefore, the Duke of Lingua allowed Li Yuan to join the Crown Prince, LV Longji, and was prepared to use the merit of helping the Duke of Lingua's public house regain its glory. Mo Tianlin did not know that Chu Xiu was thinking so much at this moment. He just sneered and said, "The Luo family is really desperate. What do they mean by inviting people from the imperial court? Is the Luo family going to rely on the imperial court or what? Don't they know that this is a taboo in Jianghu?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "The boundary between Jianghu and the imperial court is not so clear. As long as there are benefits and benefits, why can't they join forces? Don't forget that Northern Yan had to join forces with Northern Yan Jianghu to defeat Eastern Qi. Besides, now the Eastern Qi Imperial Court also knows the benefits of joining forces with people from Jianghu. White Tiger Hall, one of the 4 spirits, has now joined forces with Eastern Qi Imperial Court. Don't you know?" Mo Tianlin nodded. Of course he knew this, but as a man of Jianghu, he still had some rejection of the Imperial Court. The Luo family was only holding a martial arts competition to find a spouse. Coupled with the Luo family's current strength, Crown Prince LV Longji naturally did not have to come in person. However, he had sent his trusted aide and personal eunuchs. This was already enough. At this time, Luo Tianyang personally led Li Yuan and Chen Do to the seats of honor. Li Yuan smiled and said, "The Luo family's patriarch's daughter is famous. This martial contest for a spouse has attracted many young talents. Speaking of which, I don't seem to be very old. I wonder if I can participate?" Hearing this, Luo Tianyang revealed an awkward expression. If LV Longji said this, Luo Tianyang would definitely agree. Who cares about the imperial court or the pugilistic world? Being able to become the crown prince's wife was something that the Luo family could not ask for more. However, the problem was that these words were spoken by Li Yuan. He was only a trusted aide of the crown prince, and his position was incomparable. Moreover, the Duke of Lin's public house had already declined. Although it had the title of a duke, it could only be ranked in the middle among all the dukes and marquises in Eastern Qi. When Li Yuan saw Luo Tianyang's expression, he knew what he was thinking. This caused Li Yuan to sneer inwardly, but he said indifferently, "Patriarch Luo, please don't mind me. I was just joking." Hearing this, Luo Tianyang also laughed and chatted with them for a while before leaving. In fact, from this point, it could be seen that Luo Tianyang was indeed not very good as a patriarch. whether it was in terms of strength or ability. Just now, when Li Yuan said that, regardless of whether he was joking or not, Luo Tianyang just had to pretend to flatter him and fool him, and it would be over. In the end, Luo Tianyang acted as if he looked down on Li Yuan, but because of the latter's status, he could not say much. This completely offended Li Yuan. After Luo Tianyang left, Li Yuan's expression was already somewhat gloomy. Chen Do, who was beside him, smiled and said in a slightly sharp voice, "Why? You feel uncomfortable being looked down upon?" Li Yuan sneered and said, "No wonder the Luo family has declined to such a state. With such an idiotic patriarch, how can the Luo family have a good future?" Chen Do waved his hand and said, "Young man, don't be so hot-tempered. An expert once said that as the saying goes, the river flows east for 30 years, and then west for 30 years. Don't bully the young for being poor. Now that you are with His Highness the Crown Prince, your future is boundless. Don't think that Luo Tianyang looks down on your status now. Who knows, he might have to bow to you in the future. When the Crown Prince ascends to the throne, he will directly assign you to the military. At the very least, you will be a general or a general. At that time, it will just be a mere Luo family. Not to mention Luo Tianyang, you probably won't even have to worry about the Luo family's patriarch." When Li Yuan heard this, he cupped his hands towards Chen Do and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Eunuch Chen. Don't worry, Eunuch Chen. Since I've already joined His Highness the Crown Prince, then I will naturally go through fire and water for His Highness the Crown Prince. Only when His Highness the Crown Prince ascends to the throne in the future will there be a day for us to make a name for ourselves." Hearing Li Yuan's words, Chen Do nodded in satisfaction. Li Yuan was one of the more promising young confidants that His Highness the Crown Prince had recruited. Although his current strength could not be compared to the young talents on the Longhu list, Li Yuan was bold and meticulous in his work. He was reliable, so he had gained His Highness the Crown Prince's favor. Just then, Chen Do inadvertently looked in Chu Xiu's direction and let out a soft cry of surprise. Li Yuan asked in surprise, "Eunuch Chen, what's wrong?" Chen Do laughed coldly and said, "Nothing much. I just met a fellow that His Highness the Crown Prince often talks about. That fellow has caused His Highness the Crown Prince a lot of trouble." Li Yuan asked doubtfully, "Who is it that actually dares to go against His Highness the Crown Prince?" Chen Do pointed at Chu Xiu and said, "It's that fellow ranked 6th on the Longhu list, Chu Xiu from the Guanzhong torture room. Originally, His Highness the Crown Prince and Prince Analjiang Wenyuan were working well together. It was this fellow who leaked the news to the second prince, who then reported the matter to His Majesty. Not only did it lead to the destruction of the Prince Anal residence, but His Majesty also gave His Highness a good scolding, causing His Highness's prestige to plummet." Li Yuan asked doubtfully, "This fellow has gone overboard. Did His Highness the Crown Prince not take any action?" Chen Do snorted coldly and said, "The previous incident at the Prince Anal residence caused His Highness the Crown Prince to lose a lot of points in His Majesty's eyes. Of course he wouldn't dare to do anything. Moreover, this Chu Xiu is from the Guanzhong torture room. This is a little tricky. You also know that the Guanzhong torture room is not considered a power of our Eastern Qi, but in certain areas, they have worked with our Eastern Qi quite a bit. Moreover, this Chu Xiu is also one of the higher-ups of the Guanzhong torture room. If His Highness makes a move against him in Eastern Qi and His Majesty finds out, he will definitely be heavily punished. A lack of forbearance in small matters will spoil great plans. This kind of insignificant person can be taught a lesson at any time. There is no need to rush. Moreover, with His Highness's magnanimity, who knows, he might forget about this matter after some time." Li Yuan looked at Chu Xiu and narrowed his eyes, saying, "Don't worry, Eunuch Chen. If there is a chance, I will help His Highness vent his anger." At this moment, Chu Xiu also felt that someone was looking at him. He turned his head and just happened to meet Li Yuanli's gaze. He could feel the meaning behind that gaze. Unexpectedly, neither of them was willing to give in to the other. In terms of aura, Li Yuanli was actually able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Chu Xiu, not cowering in the slightest. Sensing the malice in Li Yuan's gaze, Chu Xiu could guess the other party's reason. After all, in the previous incident with Qiu Zhenqing at the Pegasus farm, he had stood on the second prince's side. and caused the crown prince a lot of trouble. Now it would be strange if the crown prince, LV Longji's people, still treated him well. However, this Li Yuan did indeed have the potential to become a big shot in the future. At the very least, he dared to compete with Chu Xiu in terms of aura, and was not at a disadvantage at all. In fact, although Li Yuan was the crown prince's man, his strength and status were not as good as Chu Xiu's. Stepping into the Five Qis gathering in the Origin realm at the age of 30 was considered outstanding among the warriors of the same level. But looking at the top 10 of the Longhu list, there were almost no more than 30 people who had reached this realm. In terms of reputation in Jianghu, Chu Xiu was also more famous than him. At this time, Chu Xiu was the torture officer of the Guanzhong torture room, while Li Yuan was only a low-ranking official in the Eastern Qi imperial court. If not for his identity as the crown prince, LV Longji's confidant, he was not even worth mentioning. Under the premise that he was inferior to Chu Xiu in all aspects, he was still able to make his aura not lose to Chu Xiu's, which was quite rare. After the two sides looked at each other, they withdrew their gazes. At this moment, the great ancestor of the Luo family and Luo Tianyang both went out to welcome them. To be able to put on such a show, it was naturally the Shangshui Ying family, the head of the 9 major families. Everyone looked at the gate. Luo Tianyang and the great ancestor of the Luo family led the way. From outside, 3 people walked in, but everyone present subconsciously looked at the person in the middle. The person in the middle was an extremely handsome young man. The proportions of his facial features seemed to be carved out of jade, perfect and flawless. Even the faint smile that always hung on his face had never changed. There was not even the slightest fluctuation in it. He was wearing a long black robe with white cloud patterns embroidered on it. As he walked, the white cloud patterns actually reacted with the surrounding power of heaven and earth, rippling like water. It was extremely miraculous. Clearly, his robe was not an ordinary item. This person was the unparalleled young master Ying Bailu, who was famous in Jianghu. He was proficient in astrology, military strategy, and secret martial arts. There were many people in Jianghu who were proficient in these things, and there were also many who could surpass Ying Bailu in a certain aspect. However, no one could be proficient in so many things at the same time. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was unparalleled in the world. Behind Ying Bailu was a young man who looked slightly younger than Ying Bailu. Although he was also handsome, he was not as handsome as Ying Bailu. Moreover, there was a layer of gloominess on his face, which formed a sharp contrast with Ying Bailu, who always wore a smile. Behind the two of them was an old man who deliberately took a step back from them. His subconscious hunch made it obvious that this old man was most likely a servant. However, the problem was that this old man who looked like a servant exuded an extremely powerful aura that was not inferior to Luo Junyan's. This old man was a martial Dao grandmaster. Chapter 440. With Shangshui Ying clan's strength, they definitely had no lack of martial Dao grandmasters. They even had true fire spirit refinement realm experts. But what was really strange was that someone actually used a martial Dao grandmaster as a servant. This was no longer shocking, it was horrifying. The strong had the dignity of the strong. No matter how weak a martial Dao grandmaster was, he was still a martial Dao grandmaster. No one could understand why a martial Dao grandmaster would be willing to be a servant, and why the Shangshui Ying clan dared to use him. But at this moment, everyone could see that the Luo clan's old ancestor was obviously embarrassed. Although the 9 great clans were on the same level in the pugilistic world, the gap between them was huge. Someone like the Luo clan's old ancestor could only be a servant in Shangshui Ying clan. How embarrassing was that? Ying Bailu seemed to have noticed Luo Junyan's embarrassment. He smiled and said, "Senior Luo, we're all from the 9 great clans. There's no need to be so polite. Just do what you have to do." Luo Junyan hurriedly said, "In that case, young Master Ying, please take a seat. The joust for a spouse will begin now. Young Master Ying, you're strong enough to be the ring master." The Luo clan's so-called joust for a spouse was actually just a show. Under normal circumstances, the Luo clan would either let their daughter be the ring master, and whoever could defeat Luo Feiheng would marry that person. But considering Luo Feiheng's strength and her current state, they decided to forget about it. Not to mention that there were not many men in the pugilistic world who could defeat Luo Feiheng. Even if there were, with Luo Feiheng's current state, Luo Feiheng would definitely kill the person in the ring. At that time, forget about the joust for a spouse, it would directly turn into a murder case. Therefore, the Luo clan's strategy was to let the participants of the joust for a spouse compete in the ring, and choose the ring master. The final winner would then be able to marry Luo Feiheng. Of course, now that Ing Bailu was here, this joust for a spouse was just for show. Otherwise, who could possibly defeat Ing Bailu? But right at this moment, Ing Bailu suddenly said, "I won't be ascending the arena this time." Even though my younger brother, Ing Baihu, rarely steps foot into the world, his strength is sufficient for him to ascend the arena and compete with these young geniuses of the world. As soon as Ing Bailu's words left his mouth, everyone present was stunned. Practically everyone in the pugilistic world knew that the Luo clan's goal this time was to form a marriage alliance with Ing Bailu of the Ing clan. Yet now it was Ing Bailu's younger brother, Ing Baihu. What was going on? The disciples of the Ing clan were naturally not trash, and Ing Baihu was the younger brother of Ing Bailu. His identity was even more extraordinary. However, no matter how extraordinary he was, he could not defeat Bailu. This situation left the Luo family members unable to react. Luo Junyan asked in confusion, "Young Master Ing, what do you mean by this? Don't tell me you're not going to personally enter the arena?" Ing Bailu countered with a question of his own. "Who said that I'm going to fight in person? Previously, it was your Luo clan that wanted to form a marriage alliance with my Ing clan. But did you say that it was necessary? What, could it be that you think that my younger brother is not worthy of your Luo clan, and are looking down on the disciples of my Ing clan?" Luo Junyan was immediately stumped by these words. He didn't know what to say. Could he publicly say that he looked down on Ing Baihu? Wouldn't that be the same as offending the entire Ing clan? But the crux of the problem was that Luo Feiheng's marriage to Ing Bailu and Ing Baihu were two completely different concepts. One was ranked 5th on the Longhu leaderboard, the future successor of the Ing clan, while the other was just an ordinary disciple of the Ing clan. The gap between them was too big. Below the arena, Xie Xiaolu shook his head and said, "The Luo clan is too clever for their own good." In the end, they were tricked by the Ing clan. Chu Xiu also sneered and said, "There's no such thing as taking advantage of others in this pugilistic world. The Luo clan wanted to use a daughter to gain the support and help of the Ing clan. What else can the Ing clan get other than Luo Feiheng? A half-dead Luo clan? Using Ing Baihu to form a marriage alliance with the Luo clan, using an unimportant disciple to become the in-laws of the Luo clan, and even gaining a disciple who had once entered the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, Luo Feiheng. The Ing clan of Shangshui really didn't lose out on this deal. By the way, do you know anything about that Ing Baihu? How strong is he? How does he compare to Ing Bailu?" Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "With Ing Bailu in the Ing clan, do you think the other disciples of the Ing clan can stand out?" Although Ing Baihu wasn't a nameless figure in the Ing clan of Shang River City, at the very least, he was overshadowed by Ing Bailu. Look at his gloomy expression right now. Clearly, he had a lot of opinions about his elder brother. Also, do you know how Ing Baihu got his name? Ing Bailu was called Bailu because of the auspicious omen of a white deer. However, Ing Baihu was called Ing Baihu not because a white tiger appeared when he was born, but purely because his brother was called Bailu, so he was called Baihu. For someone whose name even came into existence because of his elder brother, it would be strange if he didn't feel a bit of resentment. By the way, now that Ing Baihu is fighting, what should we do about our plan? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Of course we'll go according to plan. Since Luo Feiheng is confident, we'll just cooperate with her. Regardless of whether it's Ing Baihu or Ing Baihu, there's only one thing we need to do, and that's to stall for time." Mo Tianlin nodded, then suddenly said, "This time, Ing Baihu didn't go up himself, but let his younger brother go up instead. I feel that it's not only because the Ing clan wants to cheat the Luo clan, but also because Ing Baihu himself doesn't want to marry Feihong. I once heard that Ing Baihu is interested in the Cloud Sword Fairy, Yan Fian, who came to the Yunu Palace. But everyone knows the rules of the Yu Palace. So Yanfian can only politely decline Ing Baihu's confession, but Ing Baihu is still infatuated with her. But this is just a rumor, especially those women, so I don't know if it's true or not. Xie Xiaolu couldn't help but say, I say Mo Tianlin, you still have the mood to study these rumors? Mo Tianlin retorted. What do you mean by rumors? Know yourself, know your opponent, and you'll never be defeated. If we're going to fight Ing Baihu later, we'll have a better chance of winning if we know more, right? Xie Xiaolu curled his lips. He didn't think that these rumors would be of any help. While Xie Xiaolu was bickering with Mo Tianlin, Luo Jionian had already made his decision. He forced a smile and said, Since young Master Ing has said so, then the joust for a spouse will begin. For the entire Luo family, the first problem was who they should marry, not who they should marry. From Ing Baihu to Ing Baihu, although the difference was huge for the Luo clan, it was still a marriage alliance with the Ing clan, and the other party was a direct descendant of the Ing clan. The Luo clan couldn't say that they wouldn't get any benefits, so Luo Jionian could only nod and agree. After Luo Jionian left, Ing Baihu turned to Ing Baihu and said, Are you satisfied with the marriage I've arranged for you? Although the Wu region Luo clan is disappointing, Luo Feiheng is really not bad. It's a pity that the Luo clan was blind, buying the casket and returning the pearls. But it just so happens that I'll give this pearl to you. It's worthy of your status and the glory of the Ing clan. A cold smile appeared on Ing Baihu's face, causing his originally gloomy expression to darken even further. Ever since I was young, the clan has always prioritized you. Whatever you don't want, they give it to me. Yet, you still have to pretend to be a good elder brother. Is there any meaning to it? I can see that the Luo clan looks down on me. You were the one they wanted to marry before, but you didn't want it, so they gave it to me. Even the marriage is like this. If you're really a good brother, why didn't you give Luo Feiheng to me? Why didn't you give Yanfian to me as well? Slap. A loud slap rang out, but Ing Baihu didn't even move. Perhaps only the old servant from the Shangshui clan could see Ing Baihu's movements, but he acted as if he didn't see anything. Ing Baihu covered his face, his eyes filled with hatred as he looked at Ing Baihu, but he didn't dare to say another word. Ing Baihu still had that unchanging smile on his face, and said in a gentle tone, The things I've given you since you were young weren't charity, they were gifts, because you're my younger brother. But it's also because you're my younger brother that you should know that there are some things you shouldn't think about, and can't think about. Otherwise, as your older brother, I'll get angry. This slap is a lesson. Remember not to anger me in the future. I've already reported the marriage with the Luo clan to my father, and he's agreed. Now that the arena is in front of you, it's up to you whether you want to go or not. Ing Baihu covered his face and said coldly, Go. Why not? Sooner or later you'll regret it. He wasn't Ing Baihu, who had the right to choose any woman he liked. He didn't even need to consider marriage, and it was all up to his mood. Even if Ing Baihu wanted to marry an ordinary person, the Ing clan wouldn't interfere. But Ing Baihu was different. Since he couldn't obtain the Ing clan's power, he could borrow some of the Luo clan's power after marrying Luo Feiheng. Ing Baihu didn't care about these things, but he, Ing Baihu, would use these powers to take back what belonged to him sooner or later. Using his inner force to erase the palm print on his face, Ing Baihu took a step forward and stepped onto the arena. His 5-cheese unification stage strength was on full display, and it immediately shocked everyone present. Ing Baihu didn't look very old, but he had also reached the 5-cheese unification stage. Right now, Ing Baihu hadn't officially roamed the pugilistic world, but as long as his attainments in martial Dao were half as good as his older brothers, he wouldn't be able to escape the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. Having 2 people on the Longhu leaderboard was a terrifying achievement. Chapter 441. When Ing Baihu walked up to the stage, it truly gave everyone a fright. No one had expected that this unknown disciple of the Ing family would possess such strength. Was the strength of the Ing family of Shangshui really that terrifying? Could any random disciple of the Ing family be this powerful? At this moment on Ing Bailu's side, the old servant who had been silent all this while sighed softly and said, Eldest young master, second young master is still young. Moreover, He was strictly disciplined by the patriarch when he was young, so his way of thinking is a little extreme. Ingbailu's expression didn't change in the slightest as he looked at the arena. He said in a gentle voice, "Uncle Fu, I know that. Otherwise, do you think I would give him so many things and give him the opportunity to unite with the Luo clan through marriage? The Ying family has never been strong because of one person, but because of a group of people. Unfortunately, Baihu doesn't know this. But it doesn't matter. Let him hate me. As long as he doesn't cross my bottom line. This hatred can be used as motivation to make him stronger. If he becomes stronger, it means that Shangshui Ying clan has become stronger as well. So why not?" Uncle Fu nodded. "If only the second young master could think like you. Then the Ying family will be even more glorious." Ingbaihu was far more broad-minded than Uncle Fu had imagined. Of course, this was also the confidence brought by absolute strength. So what if Ingbaihu hated him? So what if he was jealous of him? Anyway, his younger brother couldn't catch up to him in this life, and he wouldn't be able to catch up to him in the next. He was no threat to him. The infighting and quarrels between brothers in the other clans were all because of the gap between the two sides. One wanted to replace the other, while the other was afraid of being replaced. That was why there was infighting. But the Ying family was different. Was Ingbaihu afraid of being replaced? He was the unparalleled young master peerless. No one in the Ying family could replace him. It was precisely because of this confidence that Ingbailu allowed Ingbaihu to resent him. In his opinion, Ingbaihu's actions were just like a child throwing a tantrum when he couldn't get his beloved toy. It wasn't a big deal. Of course, if Ingbaihu were to provoke his bottom line again and again, just like what he said just now, then Ingbailu would have to teach him a lesson so that he would have a good memory. At this moment on the stage, Ingbaihu's aura was released to the extreme, looking down on everyone. If he did not have the halo of defeating Bailu, he would not be easy to deal with. Perhaps he would have already stepped into Jianghu and made a name for himself in the martial world. He might not be able to beat his own brother, Bailu, but could it be that he couldn't beat the rest of the trash present? Who's going up the stage? Ingbaihu coldly shouted as he stared at the crowd below. Everyone present exchanged glances. Actually, anyone could tell that this joust for a spouse was just a show. Since they knew that Ingbailu was coming, none of them had made any preparations to enter the ring. Now that it was Ingbaihu's turn to go on stage, everyone present was a little eager. But still, no one dared to be the first to go on stage. Although Ingbaihu was inferior to Ingbailu, and judging from his aura, he should have just stepped into the Five Cheese Origin stage not long ago. The problem was that there were only a few people present who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Ingbaihu. Moreover, no one knew exactly how strong Ingbaihu was, so no one dared to be the first to test him. Seeing that no one was going up the stage, Ingbaihu frowned. His brother, Ingbailu, had long made a name for himself in Jianghu. It was about time for him to make a name for himself in Jianghu. Ordinary martial artists began to wander Jianghu when they were around the innate stage. Some of the disciples of the major sects almost always reached the inner invulnerability or physical invulnerability. For example, Shinbai only appeared in Jianghu when he cultivated to the three flowers at one's prominent stage, which was considered very late. As for Ingbaihu, he only stepped into Jianghu when he broke through the Five Cheese Origin stage. He wanted to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat, and not let the glory of Ingbailu overshadow him again. Now that it was time to make a move, it was a little awkward that no one went up the stage. Mo Tianlin looked over at Luo Feiheng. At this time, Luo Feiheng had her eyes closed, looking as if she was thinking about something. It was extremely inconsistent with her usual personality. Mo Tianlin said in a low voice, "Feiheng is not ready yet. Brother Chu, you deal with this guy first. Ingbailu won't go up the stage, so it should be very easy to deal with this guy." Chu Xiu nodded. Just as he was about to get up, he saw Xie Xiaolu blocking in front of him and said, "Brother Chu, you don't have to deal with this kind of person. What if Ingbailu goes up the stage later, or if someone stronger comes? I'll do it." Xie Xiaolu was still in the three flowers at one's prominent stage. Chu Xiu subconsciously wanted to stop him, but at this moment, he suddenly thought of something. He glanced at Xie Xiaolu with the heaven's sun gazing at air, and asked in surprise, You're about to take that step? Xie Xiaolu smiled and said, although I'm not as early as you, Brother Chu, I've been in the three flowers at once prominence stage for a long time. It's about time for me to make a breakthrough. I can use this opportunity to hone myself. On the side, Mo Tianlin couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he heard this. He was good friends with Xie Xiaolu. Now that Xie Xiaolu was about to step into the five qis origin stage, he naturally wouldn't be jealous. However, he still felt a little jealous. Anyway, he was still a little far from this stage. He hadn't even touched the threshold. As Xie Xiaolu went up the stage, Luo Jiunian and Luo Tianyang's faces darkened. They knew that Xie Xiaolu and the others were here to cause trouble. They all knew the relationship between Xie Xiaolu and Luo Feiheng. Because of this, they knew that Xie Xiaolu and the others would not marry Luo Feiheng. But now they still wanted to go up the stage. If this wasn't causing trouble, then what was? However, even if they knew that Xie Xiaolu and the others were here to cause trouble, it was useless. The stage was right there. Could the Luo family stop people from going up? Ying Bailu looked at Xie Xiaolu and asked, who is this person? Uncle Fu said softly, he is Xie Xiaolu, the disciple of Chunqing Di from the World Alliance. He is ranked 14th on the Longhu leaderboard. At this moment, Ying Bailu really didn't know who Xie Xiaolu was. It wasn't because he was arrogant, but because Ying Bailu had been famous for a long time. Moreover, it had been a long time since Ying Bailu appeared in the Jianghu. At that time, Xie Xiaolu was ranked outside the top 20. Naturally, Ying Bailu had never heard of his name. Ying Bailu nodded and said, so you're Emperor Chunqing's disciple. The World Alliance's Emperor Chunqing is quite a character. My father once said that there are countless cultivators in the world who are born in the wilderness, but those who can achieve what Emperor Chunqing has done are as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. Since this Xie Xiaolu is a disciple of Chunqing Di, he should not be weak. It's just that his realm is lower than White Tiger's. Don't worry about this round. There were countless examples of a three-flower realm cultivator defeating a five qis origin realm cultivator in the Jianghu, but it also depended on who the opponent was. The disciples of the Shang Shuiying family had always defeated those stronger than them. It would be shameful if they were challenged by someone who was a higher realm than them. At this time, Ying Baihu saw Xie Xiaolu come onto the stage. He immediately snorted coldly, and the gang qi around his body suddenly exploded. He threw a punch, and the ink-colored gang qi rose with the wind, lingering around his body, and turned into a dragon's roar as it smashed towards Xie Xiaolu's head. Ying Baihu was prepared to make a name for himself in the Jianghu this time. For him, it didn't matter who his opponent was. What he needed to do was to defeat any opponent that appeared in front of him, and then marry Luo Feiheng. Step by step, he would take back what was rightfully his. Xie Xiaolu frowned. The people of the Shang Shuiying family were indeed not simple. Even if this Ying Baihu was just a nobody in the Jianghu, the power of his attack was far beyond that of an ordinary five qis origin realm cultivator. The floating feather blade on Xie Xiaolu's back was unsheathed. The blade's edge was extremely cold, and the incomparably sharp blade momentum tore through the gang qi. It seemed light, but its power was not weak either. In an instant, the long blade in Xie Xiaolu's hand slashed out countless astral blades. His blade momentum was incomparably fast, his speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the sky-covering astral blades had already surrounded Ying Baihu. But right at this moment, a violent dragon roar rang out from Ying Baihu's body. Countless pitch-black astral energy coiled around him, transforming into the shape of a dragon. Like a soaring dragon, it roared through the heavens and earth. A series of loud sounds rang out as the countless astral saber beams shattered. Under such a powerful force, Xie Xiaolu's figure could not help but retreat. However, at this time, Ying Baihu formed a seal with both hands. As the seal descended, the gang qi condensed into the shape of a dragon. The powerful momentum seemed to be able to crush the heavens and earth, and its power increased by 30%. Everyone present had heard of this move before. It was a secret skill of the Imperial Heavenly Treasure Record of the Shang Shuiying family, the Coiling Dragon Seal. It was said that the power of this seal could shatter the heavens and split the earth. And it was extremely powerful. Xie Xiaolu gritted his teeth. This guy's strength was a bit too excessive. At this moment, he was already half a step into the five-cheese origin realm, but in terms of power he was still suppressed to the extreme by Ying Baihu. After retreating, the floating feather blade in Xie Xiaolu's hand blossomed with a deep cold light. As the blade slashed down, the blade light seemed to condense into the shape of a phoenix's feather. It seemed to be falling gently and slowly, but its speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of Ying Baihu. At this moment, Ying Baihu stretched out a hand, and powerful astral energy condensed in his hand. A black dragon claw grabbed Xie Xiaolu's saber, and a loud bang resounded. The saber energy and saber astral energy were destroyed by Ying Baihu's claw. Even the floating feather saber in Xie Xiaolu's hand couldn't endure the powerful force and was blasted away. Just when everyone thought that Xie Xiaolu was easily defeated by Ying Baihu, Xie Xiaolu did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. He condensed the gang qi around his body into a fist. It was such a simple fist, but the fist intent was extremely powerful. Under this fist, either the world's rivers and mountains will fall into my hands, or 1,000 miles of mountains and rivers will be destroyed by my fist. The fist intent of this punch was extremely tyrannical and terrifying. Ying Baihu didn't seem to be affected by this punch, but Xie Xiaolu's perlicue was already bleeding. Because this was not the fist intent that Xie Xiaolu could currently grasp, but the fist intent that belonged to his master, Chunqing Di. 1,000 miles of mountains and rivers like a painting, fist-shattering mountains and river suppression. Chapter 442. Chunqing Di's name shook the Jianghu, but no one knew what kind of cultivation technique he practiced. Because Chunqing Di was born in the wilderness, the cultivation techniques he practiced were too varied. But now, it was no longer important what kind of cultivation technique Chunqing Di practiced. The people of the Jianghu only knew that Chunqing Di's fist was very strong. It was a fist intent that could suppress mountains and rivers, shatter mountains and break rivers. This kind of powerful fist intent was condensed by Chunqing Di after experiencing countless battles and tribulations. It was a fist intent that belonged to him alone, so Xie Xiaolu could not completely inherit it. Because of this, as a disciple of Chunqing Di, Xie Xiaolu used a saber, not a fist technique. But although Xie Xiaolu used a saber, it did not mean that he did not know Chunqing Di's fist. It was just that although Chunqing Di had shown him this fist intent, with Xie Xiaolu's experience and understanding of the martial Tao, he was unable to fully display this fist intent. Even if he forced himself to display it, he would not be able to injure others, but he would still be injured, and the backlash would not be small. But at this time, the complexion of his opponent, Ying Baihu, had already changed. Xie Xiaolu's fist blasted out. The powerful fist intent stirred up all the astral energy in his body, and even the surrounding world's origin qi retreated. This was the first time Ying Baihu felt a threat from Xie Xiaolu, an extremely powerful threat. Along with this pressure, Ying Baihu roared, and the astral energy around his body faintly condensed into the shape of a dragon, roaring to the heavens and the earth, turning into a black dragon that attached itself to his body. At this moment, behind Ying Baihu, there seemed to be a figure of a dragon and a human figure intertwined, and as he blasted out his fist, it suppressed the mountains and rivers of the myriad worlds. Whether it was Chunqing Di's fist intent or Ying Baihu's fist, both were fierce and overbearing to the extreme. When the two fists collided, an incomparably powerful might burst out, shaking the entire arena to the point of cracking. At this moment, everyone's expressions changed slightly. Ying Baihu's strength had exceeded their expectations. Even Xie Xiaolu's strength had reached such a level. This was even more unexpected. Below, Mo Tianlin looked at the commotion on the field, and felt a bit upset. He was not jealous of Xie Xiaolu, but he was blaming himself for not living up to expectations. In the past, when he met Xie Xiaolu, the difference in strength between them wasn't that big. Xie Xiaolu was a bit stronger than him, but there was a limit to how much stronger he was. Later, Mo Tianlin also met Luo Feihong. However, in his opinion, a woman like Luo Feihong who was stronger than a man was simply abnormal. There was no way he could compare himself with her. He did not want to compare himself with Luo Feihong. Later on, he got to know Chu Xiu, who was even more abnormal than Luo Feiheng. He was an existence that could compete with the top 5 geniuses on the dragon and tiger list. Comparing himself to Chu Xiu was simply asking for trouble. But now, Mo Tianlin discovered that even Xie Xiaolu, whom he had always thought to be on par with him, had already surpassed him. At least, he didn't even have the courage to resist Xie Xiaolu's fist. This made Mo Tianlin somewhat depressed. Chu Xiu looked at Mo Tianlin's appearance and couldn't help but shake his head. Brother Mo, your personality is like this. You like to enjoy life. In fact, you don't need to deliberately compare yourself with others. Just be yourself. Otherwise, if you force yourself to cultivate, not only will it not bring you any benefits, it will also lead to a bottleneck in your heart. Regarding Mo Tianlin's personality, Chu Xiu could be considered to be quite familiar. Mo Tianlin really wasn't the kind of person who was suited to fight in the wind and rain of Jianghu. Just look at the things that Mo Tianlin liked to do. He liked to enjoy wine, he liked to write poems and songs. The only things that he didn't like were cultivation and martial arts. Moreover, Mo Tianlin's strength was actually very ordinary. The reason why he was able to step into the dragon and tiger list was because he was dumped by a woman. Because of this, he started to cultivate crazily in a moment of anger, which resulted in his current strength. Therefore, it could be said that Mo Tianlin was a person with talent. The only thing that he lacked was a heart that specialized in martial arts. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Mo Tianlin smiled bitterly and said, Brother Chu is right, I'm a bit too stubborn. However, I really need to cultivate harder during this period of time. Otherwise, not only will I be completely left behind by you, I reckon that I won't even be able to keep my position in the Mo clan. Currently, Mo Tianlin was the successor of the Mo clan. In fact, Mo Tianlin didn't really care much about this so-called successor. Because of this, the gap between him and the other younger generation of the Mo clan wasn't too big. Many of the younger generation of the Mo clan coveted his position. Although Mo Tianlin didn't care about this position, he knew that if someone else took his position, then he might not be able to enjoy the things that he currently enjoyed in the future. At this time, Xie Xiaolu and Ning Baihu exchanged blows. Under the violent fluctuations, the smoke and dust dispersed. Ning Baihu's complexion was deathly pale, while Xie Xiaolu's mouth was already bleeding. Even his right arm was slightly trembling. Clearly, the injury wasn't light. Ning Baihu's eyes revealed a trace of anger and humiliation. After the exchange, it was obvious that Ning Baihu won, but his victory was somewhat forced. He originally planned to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat, but now facing Xie Xiaolu, whose strength was far inferior to his, he was in such a sorry state. This was clearly different from what he had planned. Just when Ning Baihu was about to attack again, Xie Xiaolu, who was facing him, directly said, I admit defeat. Xie Xiaolu's 3 words were said without the slightest hesitation. He was only here to stall for time and temper his own strength. There was no need for him to fight Ning Baihu to the death. Ning Baihu, who was about to attack, paused again. This caused his face to turn red. In the end, he could only coldly snort and withdraw his step. Luo Junyan stood up and said in a deep voice, Is there anyone else who wants to go up? Everyone present looked at each other. With the strength that Ning Baihu had displayed just now, who would dare to go up and court death? Especially since Ning Baihu seemed to be in a fit of anger. His attacks were quite ruthless. If they went up now, wouldn't they be helping him vent his anger? Let me. Chu Xiu had a smile on his face as he walked up the stage step by step. Luo Junyan narrowed his eyes as he looked at Chu Xiu. He knew that this group of people would definitely come out to cause trouble. But unexpectedly, Luo Junyan didn't care. He just looked deeply at Chu Xiu and walked down the stage. Previously, Luo Junyan was cheated by the Ying clan's people. He was also a veteran of the Jianghu for so many years. How could he not have any thoughts? If Chu Xiu wanted to cause trouble, then let him cause trouble. If Chu Xiu lost, Luo Feiheng would be able to marry into the Ying clan normally. If Chu Xiu won, then could Ying Bailu just watch as his younger brother was defeated and not make a move? If Ying Bailu made a move, Chu Xiu would lose without a doubt. At that time, Luo Feiheng would be able to marry Ying Bailu smoothly, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Luo Junyan also thought of the worst outcome. The Ying clan would sit and watch as Ying Baihu was defeated by Chu Xiu, and Ying Bailu wouldn't make a move. But that didn't matter. At most, the Luo clan wouldn't marry into the Ying clan. Although the Luo clan's actions were somewhat untrustworthy, going back on their words in the end after agreeing to hold a martial arts competition for a spouse, in the pugilistic world, things like trustworthiness were just words. Even if the Luo clan were to publicly act shamelessly and refuse to marry off their daughter, what could Chu Xiu do to them? On the stage, Chu Xiu glanced at Ying Baihu and said, "Although you aren't seriously injured, you're a little exhausted. I won't take advantage of you, lest others say that I'm taking turns fighting you. Rest for a while first, then I'll make a move." As soon as these words came out, the crowd immediately felt that this Chu Xiu was quite considerate. He knew not to take advantage of others when they were down. But below, Nie Donglu looked at Chu Xiu with a frown. As the saying goes, the person who understands you the most is usually not a friend, but an enemy. Nie Donglu and Chu Xiu were enemies, and it wasn't just a day or two. So he clearly knew what kind of person Chu Xiu was. It wasn't too much to say that he was unscrupulous. Since when did Chu Xiu's character become so noble? Under normal circumstances, he should be hitting someone when they're down. So Nie Donglu's intuition told him that there was definitely something fishy going on. But he couldn't guess what Chu Xiu was thinking. On the stage, Ying Baihu took a deep look at Chu Xiu, then sat cross-legged on the ground to recover his internal energy. Chu Xiu was different from Xie Xiaolu. He was also at the Five Qis origin stage. When Ying Baihu was still in seclusion in the Shangshui Ying clan, Chu Xiu was already fighting with experts at the unity of heaven and man realm. And on the Longhu list, Chu Xiu was only after his brother defeated Bailu. Facing such an opponent, Ying Baihu couldn't help but be cautious. Of course, at the same time, Ying Baihu was also a little excited. As long as he could defeat Chu Xiu face to face, he would be ranked 6th on the Longhu list. He would be one step closer to his brother's position. About a quarter of an hour later, Ying Baihu stood up. His breathing had completely calmed down. Chu Xiu held the saber in his hand and asked, "Is it done?" Ying Baihu nodded his head. But just as Ying Baihu nodded, Chu Xiu's saber had already been unsheathed. Boundless demonic energy intertwined with the baleful blood energy. The saber light of dozens of zhang almost penetrated the entire stage. When the saber slashed down, the demonic might was monstrous. The might of Chu Xiu's saber was simply terrifying. Even the move that Ying Baihu and Xie Xiaolu used just now couldn't compare to Chu Xiu's saber. Even after seeing this saber, Ying Baihu, who was sitting below, suddenly sat up straight and said in a deep voice, "He lost. Baihu has already lost. Who is this Chu Xiu?" Uncle Fu said in a deep voice behind Ying Baihu, "This kid came from the underworld. I heard that he was a rogue cultivator and an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society. Finally, he joined the Guanzhong torture room and became the Guanxi torture room. His momentum on the Longhu list is like a hot knife cutting through butter. He is a dark horse and not a simple character. Second young master's chances of winning this time are indeed not high." Chapter 443. Xie Xiaolu and Chu Xiu both used sabers, but Ying Baihu could block Xie Xiaolu's saber, while Chu Xiu's saber was something Ying Baihu didn't even have the courage to block. Under the roaring saber aura, Ying Baihu's first choice was to retreat, and block. The black astral energy around his body condensed into the shape of a dragon, coiling around him. As Chu Xiu's saber aura slashed down, the black astral energy was torn apart, and the powerful demonic qi entered his body. Ying Baihu immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and a look of shock appeared in his eyes. This was a complete suppression in terms of strength. Both sides were not on the same level. No matter how Ying Baihu tried to block, it was useless. Ying Bailu shook his head and said, "Baihu's combat experience is too little. In the family, Uncle Fu and the others have been feeding him moves, but you've never dealt a fatal blow. Similarly, Baihu also knows that you won't deal a fatal blow to him. Now that he's fighting with someone, he subconsciously chose the safest way to deal with it. He doesn't know that this is the biggest taboo in a battle between cultivators. My Ying clan's royal heavenly treasure records is firm and imposing, advancing with indomitable will. Now that he's choosing to retreat and defend, he's already at a disadvantage. Especially when his opponent is someone like Chu Xiu, who's also firm and fierce. If he takes a step back, he won't be able to go back. Uncle Fu said in a low voice behind Ing Bailu. But if he doesn't take a step back, second young master will definitely lose. Ing Bailu lightly pointed at his chest and said indifferently, "Cultivators advance with indomitable will." He took a step back, but what he's afraid of is his own heart. Although we should try our best to avoid putting ourselves in danger, once we start fighting with our lives on the line, we can't have the slightest thought of retreating. Now that I'm here and Uncle Fu is here, Baihu still doesn't dare to fight with his life on the line. What he lacks now isn't strength, but a heart that advances with indomitable will. Uncle Fu shook his head at the side. Eldest young master could see everything clearly, but unfortunately, not everyone was like eldest young master. But in other words, if second young master had eldest young master's state of mind and strength, would eldest young master still be so calm? Thinking of this, Uncle Fu didn't dare to think about it anymore. Although he was a martial Dao grandmaster, he had been a servant of the Ying clan for generations. Without the Shangshui Ying clan, he would not have his current strength. Moreover, a martial Dao grandmaster like him did not have much of an advantage over Ing Bailu. Uncle Fu had spent his entire life to reach this level, whereas Ing Bailu was destined to become a grandmaster in the future. He might even be able to climb even higher and become an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm, or even the legendary supreme martial artist. At this moment, Ing Baihu, who had been severely injured by Chu Xiu's saber, was indeed like what Ing Bailu had said. After taking a step back, he no longer had a chance to move forward. The saber technique in Chu Xiu's hand surged forward, forcing Ing Baihu to block it bitterly. Ing Baihu was nearly blasted off the arena by Chu Xiu as the demonic saber swung out. At this moment, Ing Baihu had completely abandoned the idea of defeating Chu Xiu. He just wanted to not lose so badly. However, under Chu Xiu's demonic saber, Ing Baihu was gradually unable to resist. A ruthless look appeared in his eyes. At this moment, he wanted to fight with his life on the line. As Ing Baihu performed a hand seal, a wisp of blood qi in his body surged into the earth energy around him. The majestic earth energy directly condensed into a ferocious black dragon. However, the dragon's eyes were stained with 2 smears of crimson, making it look extremely real. The black earth energy dragon stretched for hundreds of feet. Not to mention the 5 Qi's origin realm. Even among the unity of heaven and man realm martial artists, there were very few martial artists who could have such a degree of earth energy. However, at this moment, a strange divine light bloomed in Chu Xiu's eyes. Under Chu Xiu's heaven sun gazing at air, the power structure of the earth energy dragon was revealed in detail. As Chu Xiu's saber descended, the saber technique was not as ferocious and domineering as before. It appeared light, but it slashed down at the earth energy dragon at a strange angle like an antelope hanging its horn. The crimson light in the eyes of the astral energy dragon shattered completely, and its huge body crumbled, turning into astral energy that scattered in all directions. The powerful backlash caused Ing Baihu to spit out a mouthful of blood, and an expression of disbelief appeared on his face. This was the Ying clan's Royal Heavenly Treasure Record's secret technique, Dragon's Finishing Touch. It only had a form when condensed from earth energy, but when one used their own qi, blood, and martial intent to add eyes to the earth energy dragon, it would allow an invisible object to display a world-shaking transformation. In the end, his secret technique was defeated by Chu Xiu the moment he used it. Furthermore, it was defeated in such an inexplicable manner that he didn't even know how he had lost. Chu Xiu's figure did not move. He waved his hand, and as the demonic aura surged, Ing Baihu's qi and blood began to churn. Under the great demonic blood technique, Ing Baihu could not even control the power of his qi and blood. However, he still had some foundation after all. He would not be like other warriors, who would have his qi and blood drawn out by Chu Xiu's great demonic blood technique so easily. He gritted his teeth and tried to suppress the churning qi and blood in his body with a ferocious expression. However, he soon discovered that no matter what he did, the qi and blood in his body were boiling even more violently. It was as if his qi and blood no longer belonged to him. Ing Baihu's expression did not change in the slightest as he watched his younger brother suffer such a miserable defeat at the hands of Chu Xiu. He simply said to Fu Bo, "Fu Bo, make your move. Baihu has received enough of the lesson and tempering he deserves. If this continues, his qi and blood will be damaged and his foundation will be damaged." Fu Bo nodded. His figure moved, and in the next moment, he appeared in front of Ing Baihu. He patted Ing Baihu's shoulder lightly, and in an instant, a powerful force surged into Ing Baihu's body, completely isolating Chu Xiu's great demonic blood technique. "Young man, when it is possible to let people go, one should forgive them. If you go too far, you won't have a good ending." Fu Bo looked deeply at Chu Xiu and said lightly. Chu Xiu withdrew his great demonic blood technique and shrugged. "Anyone who enters the arena must be prepared to be killed. No one will show mercy in the arena of life and death. If he had admitted defeat, I would have stopped. However, it seems that the people of your Ing clan do not have the habit of admitting defeat. In that case, don't blame me for not holding back. Besides, who said that going too far won't have a good ending? In my opinion, if you don't go too far, you'll only bring endless trouble in the future. Of course, you're a senior, and the words of a senior always make sense." Fu Bo snorted coldly after being stabbed by Chu Xiu's words. He directly grabbed Ing Baihu and turned to leave. If Chu Xiu dared to speak to other martial Dao grandmasters like this, they would definitely teach Chu Xiu a lesson. However, Fu Bo's primary identity was a servant of the Ing clan, and his secondary identity was a martial Dao grandmaster. As long as Ing Baihu did not say anything, he would not make a move against Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu stood on the arena, calmly looking around. In truth, he did not use much strength to defeat Ing Baihu. Ing Baihu came from the Shangshui Ing clan, so he had a solid foundation and a high cultivation base. Unfortunately, his combat experience was too lacking, which led to his poor combat strength. Combat experience was something that could only be tempered through life and death battles. Even if one didn't step into the Jianghu, some big sects would have some dangerous secret realms that could allow their disciples to experience life and death battles. That way they could train themselves. However, Ing Baihu had clearly not experienced this kind of tempering. He only thought that he could obtain great strength by cultivating diligently. This was true. If he encountered a cultivator like Xie Xiaolu who was weaker than him, Ing Baihu could naturally crush his opponent with pure strength. But if he faced someone like Chu Xiu who was stronger than him in both strength and combat strength, the process would be reversed, and it would be Chu Xiu suppressing him. Ing Bailu looked at Ing Baihu, who had a look of disbelief on his face, and said indifferently, "Didn't you want to challenge me? You can't even take this little setback? You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth until you step into the Jianghu. Do you really think that the people on the Longhu list are useless? With your strength, you can barely beat Xie Xiaolu, who is one level lower than you. There are also warriors in the three-flower realm in the top 10 of the Longhu list. Although you are one level higher than them, you may not be able to beat them." Ing Baihu stood silently behind Ing Bailu. However, from the way he clenched his fists tightly, it wasn't hard to tell that he would have to train hard after returning to the Ing clan. He wanted to catch up to Ing Bailu as soon as possible. At this time, on the arena, Luo Jiunian looked at Ing Baihu. However, Ing Baihu did not have the slightest intention of making a move, which made Luo Jiunian a little anxious. What did Ing Baihu mean by this? Did he really look down on Luo Feihang? Moreover, his younger brother had been crushed by Chu Xiu. Didn't he want to take revenge for his younger brother? Even Uncle Fu hesitated behind Ing Baihu and transmitted his voice. "Young master, are you really not going to make a move? If you make a move, no one here can beat you. Luo Feihang is 100% yours, young master. Although the Luo family of Wu County has declined greatly, you also said that Luo Feihang is a bright pearl. Her future is limitless." Ing Baihu shook his head and said, "Luo Feihang is a bright pearl, but unfortunately, she is not the pearl in my heart. Therefore, I can't take this pearl away. Uncle Fu, there is no need to say more. You know how I feel. My family and father will not interfere with my decision." Uncle Fu sighed. Young master was the most outstanding youth he had seen in his life. In Uncle Fu's opinion, Even the celestial master abodes Zhangqingzhen and the great light temple's wisdom monarch Zhongshuan could not compare to young master. One could only draw talismans, while the other could only chant scriptures. However, it was a pity that he could not obtain the pearl in young master's heart. The female disciples of the Yu Palace never married outside. Even if they did, they would not have a good ending. Not to mention that Yan Fian was the most outstanding disciple of the Yu Palace in this generation. She was also the successor of the Yu Palace. Even if Yan Fian and Ing Baihu were in love, the Yu Palace would not let her go. Moreover, Uncle Fu had seen Yan Fian once. In his opinion, that little girl was not easy to deal with. She had too many schemes in her heart. On the contrary, someone like Luo Feiheng was a good match. Chapter 444. Ing Bailu didn't want to make a move. Chu Xiu stood proudly in front of the crowd, but no one made a sound. Based on the strength Chu Xiu displayed just now, who would dare to court death? Nie Donglu was Chu Xiu's old rival. He had already lost to Chu Xiu last time, so he naturally wouldn't jump out and make trouble for himself. If he didn't have absolute confidence, Nie Donglu wouldn't fight Chu Xiu head-on. As for Eastern Cheese Li Yuan, although he said he would teach Chu Xiu a lesson to avenge the crown prince, he wasn't an idiot. He knew his own strength and knew that he couldn't beat Chu Xiu one-on-one. It was more likely that he would cause trouble for Chu Xiu in secret. So for a moment, the crowd was silent. Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Luo Junyan and said with a smile, "I say, Senior Luo, it looks like there's no one here who wants to participate. In that case, I'm the victor of this joust for a spouse search competition, right?" Luo Junyan looked at Ing Bailu, but the latter didn't seem to see him. He had no intention of making a move. This time Luo Junyan finally understood. He could be considered a veteran, but this time, he was tricked by Ing Bailu. No wonder when they contacted the Ing Enterprises, they didn't mention anything like an engagement. Instead, they insisted on holding a joust for a spouse. As long as there was no engagement, the Ing Enterprises could advance or retreat as they pleased. But the Luo family was trapped here. Luo Junyan looked at Chu Xiu and frowned. "Chu Xiu, don't make trouble here. So what if you win this round? Don't think I don't know the relationship between you two. You are just good friends. Are you really going to marry Luo Feihong?" Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, "Who says that good friends can't marry? She treats me as a good friend, but now I want to treat Feihong as my lover. Can't I? We are all young people. Isn't it normal to fall in love with each other? Or do you think that I, Chu Xiu, am not worthy of your Luo family? Or are you going to go back on your words?" Chu Xiu's series of rhetorical questions were reasonable, but Luo Junyan waved his hand and snorted coldly. "Chu Xiu, you're just making trouble. This matter does not count. The joust for a spouse is temporarily suspended." Everyone present could see that Luo Junyan was acting shamelessly. It was just a family. Even if a martial Dao Grand Master went back on his word, what could you do to him? Could he forcefully take Luo Feiheng away? However, at this moment Luo Feiheng, who had been sitting quietly in the Luo clan's side, suddenly opened his eyes and said, "Luo Junyan, do you really treat me as a commodity? You didn't sell me for a good price, so you're looking for an opportunity to sell me again?" Luo Tianyang's face sank as he shouted, "How dare you? How dare you call the ancestor by his name? Hurry up and apologize to the ancestor." Luo Feiheng sneered, "Apologize, Luo Tianyang. From the day you attacked me, I no longer have anything to do with the Luo clan. From now on, you and I are strangers. As for this old fart, I'm giving him face by calling him by his name." The previous generation of the Luo clan was still tolerable, but it was his generation that caused the Luo clan to decline to this state. To think he still has the nerve to live. If it were me, I would have killed myself and gone back to apologize to my ancestors. One had to admit that Luo Feiheng's mouth was really vicious. Luo Junyan's face was as gloomy as water at this moment. He shouted in a low voice, "Break his legs and throw him into the ancestral hall to repent to his ancestors. The Luo clan doesn't have such an unfilial disciple." However, at this moment, Luo Feiheng's lips curled into a sneer. "Ancestral hall? I'm afraid from today onward, you won't throw any disciple into the ancestral hall to repent. As he spoke, Luo Feiheng suddenly stretched out his left hand. Previously, Luo Feiheng was sitting there with his eyes closed. His left hand was also shrouded in the sleeve of his robe, so no one noticed it. Only now did they realize that Luo Feiheng's left hand was actually holding a transparent amber ball that was stained with Luo Feiheng's blood. After absorbing Luo Feiheng's blood, the ball was actually covered with blood vessels and looked a little evil. Seeing the ball, the expressions of Luo Jianyan, Luo Tianyang, and some of the Luo clan's elders changed. Luo Jianyan shouted, "Why is the ancestral relic in your hands?" Upon hearing this, everyone immediately turned to look at the ancestral relic in Luo Feiheng's hand. So this was the Luo clan's legendary ancestral relic. Each of the 9 great families had at least a few hundred years of heritage, so they naturally had some trump cards. The Luo clan was naturally the same. Among them, the Luo clan was most famous for this ancestral relic. It was said that the Luo clan's ancestor was once a monk. Of course, he was not a monk from the Great Light Temple or the Sabodhi Monastery. In the end, the Luo clan's ancestor was a monk for more than 10 years before he suddenly converted to Taoism and became a Taoist priest for more than 10 years. Only then did he suddenly renounce asceticism, get married, have children, and establish the Luo clan. Therefore, the Luo clan's cultivation method was very interesting. It could be considered to be a dual cultivation of Taoism and Buddhism, but the traces of each were not obvious. This ancestral relic was formed from the Luo clan's ancestors' cultivation when he passed away. He also used the formation techniques he learned in Taoism to set up a large formation that could attack, defend, and cultivate in the entire Luo clan's mansion. This large formation could be used for both attack and defense. Usually, it would condense a strong qi of heaven and earth at a specific location for the Luo clan's disciples to cultivate. It could be said to be an all-rounder. The core of this large formation was this ancestral relic. It was usually enshrined in the Luo clan's ancestral hall. No one expected it to fall into the hands of Luo Feiheng. Holding the ancestral relic, Luo Feiheng smirked and said, "How did you get it? Have you forgotten who locked me up in the ancestral hall?" Hearing this, Luo Jianyan and the other elders of the Luo clan trembled with anger. This was not because they were careless, but because they did not expect Luo Feiheng to be so rebellious. Things like the ancestral relic were guaranteed to be enshrined in the ancestral hall. After all, for a family, the ancestral hall was the place where they enshrined their ancestors. It was the absolute central area and the most sacred place. If the Luo clan was attacked by external enemies, and the attack reached the ancestral hall, it would be a disaster that would destroy the entire clan. Therefore, the ancestral hall was the safest place for the Luo clan. Moreover, as a disciple of the Luo clan, they should know what the ancestral relic represented. Who would dare to touch it? What Luo Feiheng did was basically the same as digging up his own ancestral grave. Luo Feiheng sneered and played with the ancestral relic in his hand. He said coldly, "This thing is now in my hand and has been completely soaked in my blood. Moreover, you should know where this place is located in the entire Luo clan's large formation. What do you think will happen if I crush the ancestral relic here?" Luo Junyan's expression suddenly changed. They were currently in the courtyard of the Luo clan's front hall, which was also covered by the Luo clan's large formation. This place was where the life gate of the Luo clan's large formation was located. Without the core of the formation, the Luo clan's large formation would not be able to be activated. However, they could find something else to replace it in the future. However, if Luo Feiheng directly crushed the ancestral relic here, the life gate of the formation would also be broken, and the entire formation of the Luo family would be destroyed. This was equivalent to destroying a life-saving trump card of the Luo family. How dare you? If you dare to touch the ancestral relic, you will definitely not be able to take half a step out of the Luo clan. Luo Jianyan gritted his teeth and spat out these words. He really did not expect Luo Feiheng to be so rebellious. She actually dared to use the ancestral relic to threaten him. At this time, Chu Xiao and the others also stood up and stood beside Luo Feiheng. Their attitude was obvious. Previously, Luo Feiheng had already told them the plan, and ask them to help stall for time. Meanwhile, she would stay at the life gate of the large formation and use her blood to completely control the ancestral relic. This thing was only a dead object. In theory, as long as a martial artist had the Luo clan's bloodline, they could control it. If the Luo clan's patriarch could do it, then so could she. Of course, after doing this, Luo Feiheng would definitely break off relations with the Luo clan. It might even escalate to the point where one of them would die. Moreover, Chu Xiao and the others could also be said to have offended the Luo clan. In the original plot, Luo Feiheng only crippled Luo Feiyun and broke off relations with the Luo clan. However, it could not be considered as a fight to the death. However, this time Luo Feiheng played it big enough. He directly wanted to destroy the entire Luo clan's foundation. Luo Junyan looked at Chu Xiao and the others standing beside Luo Feiheng. He first said to Mo Yezi coldly, "Mo Yezi, you and I can be considered old friends. This is my Luo clan's matter. Do you really want to get involved?" Mo Yezi said indifferently, "Luo Junyan, don't mess up our friendship. I have nothing to do with you. Your Luo clan's previous leader, Luo Shiming, is a character who once helped me. That's why I agreed to refine a weapon for your Luo clan. However, the blood spear red kite has already been refined. Naturally, our friendship is over. Now you're trying to force the owner of the blood spear red kite to leave. What do you think I should help? Moreover, this time, your Luo clan is too incompetent. You want to rely on marriage to extend the clan's future? Isn't that ridiculous? I hit it off with Feihong. I have to intervene in this matter." Luo Junyan turned his gaze to Chu Xiao and the others. They also had a fearless look on their faces. Xie Xiaolu was backed by a fierce person like Qinqing Di. Moreover, the power behind him was in West Chu. To put it bluntly, without Luo Feiheng, he didn't care about the Luo clan at all. If Luo Junyan wanted to demand an explanation from the Heaven Alliance, he would most likely be punched out by Qinqing Di. Emperor Qinqing Di had always been this domineering when it came to helping those close to him. As for Chu Xiao, not to mention the fact that he was secretly a member of the Yinma clan and had a powerful backing. Even on the surface, the Guanzhong torture room was far more powerful than the Luo clan. The only one who had some concerns was Mo Tianlin. However, for Mo Tianlin, since he had already made up his mind, he would at most resist this matter. Anyway, although the Mo clan wasn't strong, they were still stronger than the Luo clan. Chapter 445. Luo Junyan was on the verge of exploding. Luo Junyan was not famous in the Jianghu, but he was the Luo clan's patriarch. Since when had he ever been threatened by a junior like this? However, at this time, Luo Tianyang whispered behind Luo Junyan, "Old ancestor, just let them go if they can't do it. Feihong has the ancestral relic of our Luo family. Once she is enraged, it will be a lose-lose situation. Even if Feihong can't leave the Luo family, our Luo family will suffer a great loss." Luo Tianyang said this partly for the Luo clan's sake, and partly for Luo Feiheng's sake. After all, Luo Feiheng was his biological daughter. It would be unreasonable to say that Luo Tianyang had no feelings for her at all. If Luo Feiheng really destroyed the ancestral relic and the Luo clan's grand formation, Luo Feiheng would definitely die today. Although Mo Yezi was on their side, Mo Yezi was not a martial Dao grandmaster with combat strength. Chu Xiao and the others were only relatively strong among the younger generation. How could they fight against the entire Luo clan? Therefore, it was better for both sides to take a step back and let Luo Feiheng go. The Luo clan would only lose some face, but they would not lose too much. However, Luo Tianyang ignored Luo Junyan's current state of rage and his identity. If someone else had said this, Luo Junyan might have calmed down and taken a step back. However, Luo Tianyang was Luo Feiheng's father. His words were basically adding fuel to the fire. Luo Junyan looked at Luo Tianyang with a gloomy gaze and said coldly, "You're still speaking up for this vile spawn and trying to save her life? It's all because of the good daughter you've taught. As the patriarch, it's fine that you're not living up to expectations, but you've taught two children. One is useless, and the other is a traitor. From now on, you can forget about being the patriarch." Luo Tianyang was stunned when he heard this. He couldn't believe that he would end up like this. Luo Junyan looked at Luo Feiheng and said coldly, "Vile spawn, I'll give you one last chance. Hand over the ancestral relic, and I'll spare your life. You can repent in front of the ancestors of the Luo clan. Otherwise, you'll wish you were dead." Luo Junyan was furious, but Luo Feiheng's character was far tougher than he had imagined. Hearing Luo Junyan's words, Luo Feiheng didn't say a word. He took the ancestral relic in her hand and crushed it with a loud bang. His actions were so direct that it was beyond everyone's imagination. In that instant, the eyes of the people from the Luo family turned red. The ancestral relic not only represented the Luo family's trump card, but it also represented the Luo family's ancestors. Now that Luo Feiheng had crushed it, it was as if he had dug up his own ancestor's grave and scattered his ashes on the ground. "You're courting death," Luo Junyan shouted angrily. A powerful aura surged from his body, and he was about to attack Luo Feiheng. However, the moment the ancestral relic was destroyed, the entire Luo family began to tremble. Layers of formation inscriptions appeared on the ground, but the radiance of the formation had already begun to shatter. At this time, an elder's expression suddenly changed and he shouted, "Ancestor, don't worry about her. The ancestral hall is the eye of the formation. Once the formation is destroyed, the ancestral hall will be destroyed as well." The Luo clan's ancestral hall was a place to worship their ancestors, so it was extremely meaningful. If the Luo clan's ancestral hall was destroyed in the hands of their generation, then they would really be too ashamed to face their ancestors. However, Luo Junyan was already enraged. He said coldly, "There's still time. I'll kill this vile spawn before the formation is destroyed." On Luo Feiheng's side, Mo Yezi sighed and said, "Now that you've made a move, you and the Luo family will never rest until one of you is dead." Luo Feiheng said calmly, "From the moment the Luo family decided to betray me, the result was already decided." Mo Yezi shook his head and said, "You guys take Feiheng and rush out. I'll buy some time and bring up the rear." As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Yezi took out 4 swords from the secret space box. These 4 swords were shining brightly. They were 4 godly weapons. As Mo Yezi poured his true chi into the swords, the 4 swords carried sword chi and flew towards Luo Junyan. Even though Mo Yezi had never cultivated any martial techniques and had no combat ability, this did not mean that he did not have the slightest ability to resist. As a grandmaster of weaponsmithing, Mo Yezi had no lack of weapons. To others, a god weapon was an existence that could only be chanced upon by luck, but to Mo Yezi, as long as he had enough materials, forging a god weapon was not too difficult. These 4 long swords were personally forged by Mo Yezi. Every day, he would nourish them with his own blood essence and chi. Moreover, Mo Yezi had asked a few Taoist masters of the real martial arts cult to carve a sword formation on them. As long as there was enough real chi at the critical moment, these 4 long swords could automatically display the real martial arts cult's true martial sword formation. Although the power was not too strong, it was enough to delay the enemy for a while. With Luo Junyan's strength, this sword formation might not be able to stop him, but he would not be able to break it so easily either. Seeing that Mo Yezi had some tricks up his sleeves, Chu Xiu squinted and said, "Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, he took the lead. The heavenly demon dance in his hand was filled with demonic chi, and the first few warriors from the Luo family were killed on the spot. "How dare you!" A warrior from the Luo family in the unity of heaven and man realm rushed out. His gang chi condensed around him, and the sword momentum in his hand had just condensed when he saw Chu Xiu's saber slashing toward him. Chu Xiu had already condensed the saber intent of the 3 blades of Avicii into his bones. With the 3 blades as one, this saber was like a saber of judgment that had been slashed out from hell. It was evil yet dignified. Moreover, Chu Xiu's saber did not give the martialist any chance to dodge at all. At the same time, he had already used the heaven's sun gazing at air technique. He had completely seen through the Luo family martialist's escape route and sealed off any chance he had of dodging this saber. At this moment, the warrior from the Luo family felt like an insect hanging on a spider's web. He was surrounded by an inescapable net from all directions. He wanted to struggle, but before he could move, Chu Xiu's saber had already fallen. The gangqi was extinguished and the weapon shattered. Everyone could only see a smear of blood. The warrior from the Luo family in the unity of heaven and man realm was directly cut in half by Chu Xiu. Blood and internal organs spilled out. This terrifying scene immediately made the warriors from the Luo family in the unity of heaven and man realm stop where they were, not daring to move. The Luo family actually had some warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm, such as warriors of the same generation as Luo Tianyang, and some elders of the Luo family. They were all at the unity of heaven and man realm. However, Chu Xiu's saber was a bit too terrifying. Killing people was like killing chickens. A great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm could not even withstand one saber strike from him. Was there anything more terrifying than this? With the power of Chu Xiu's saber, Chu Xiu and the others had even passed through the front hall. However, no one from the Luo family dared to stop them. Seeing this scene, even Ying Bailu could not help but say, "The Luo family is about to be crippled." For an aristocratic family, it was normal for them to be weak. Even the tides of the world rose and fell, let alone a small aristocratic family like the Luo family. But now, the Luo family did not even have the courage to do anything. With so many people facing Chu Xiu and Luo Feiheng, they were actually so afraid that they did not even have the courage to make a move. This was indeed a bit too cowardly. Uncle Fu, who was behind Ying Bailu, asked, "Young master, should we make a move or just watch?" Ying Bailu said indifferently, "Let's just watch. The Luo family is already crippled. There is no point in making a move to save the Luo family at this time. Such a Luo family does not even have the qualifications to form an alliance with my Ying family. In the past, the only valuable thing in the Luo family was Luo Feiheng. Unfortunately, the Luo family has forced him away. This way, the Luo family is no different from trash. What value do they have?" Ying Bailu did not want to save the Luo family, but someone else wanted to. To be precise, they did not want to save the Luo family. They just wanted to make things difficult for Chu Xiu. This person was Li Yuan. Li Yuan was the Crown Prince's confidant. But in reality, apart from being the Crown Prince's confidant, he had not made any contributions to the Crown Prince, LV Longji. Even when he was put in an important position under LV Longji, it was not because he had made any great contributions. It was because he was more reliable in handling matters. In the past, Li Yuan didn't think too much about it since he didn't have the chance to do so. But now he happened to see Chu Xiu, the fellow who had once caused great trouble for the Crown Prince. If he taught Chu Xiu a lesson this time, although it wouldn't be considered a great merit, it would still be good to make the Crown Prince happy. Therefore Li Yuan thought about it and said to Qindo, "Eunuch Qin, given the current situation, should we help the Luo family?" Qindo touched his chin. If he was not a eunuch, this would be the posture of stroking his beard and thinking. Unfortunately, Qindo did not have a beard, so this action seemed redundant. Help the Luo family? But the Luo family did not directly choose to join His Highness. They only want to build a relationship with His Highness. They are not considered our people. If we help the Luo family, are you sure that the Luo family will be grateful and join the Crown Prince? If not, then we will suffer a great loss." Li Yuan smiled and said, "Eunuch Qin, you said before that His Highness often gnashed his teeth at Chu Xiu. Previously, His Highness had concerns and could not make a move against Chu Xiu. Now we can use the excuse of helping the Luo family to deal with the rebels to attack Chu Xiu. This excuse should be enough, right?" Chapter 446. The fight within the Luo clan was not that intense. In fact, in Chu Xiu's opinion, the level of trash in the Luo clan was beyond his imagination. On the other side, Mo Yezi made his move. Countless sword chi crisscrossed and blocked Luo Junyan's path. Although the sword formation formed by the four divine weapons was clearly not a match for Luo Junyan, Chu Xiu was about to kill his way out. To be more accurate, he was running away. This was because, apart from Chu Xiu killing a cultivator from the Luo clan, the other cultivators from the Luo clan were so frightened that they did not dare to make a move. To be honest, even Chu Xiu felt that it was a little unbelievable. If it was a group of loose cultivators, it would be fine. After all, Those loose cultivators were divided at heart. Even if there were benefits or the threat of death in front of them, they would not want to be the first to die. But now the other party was from the same clan. They were bound together for good or bad. Based on Luo Feiheng's previous actions, it would not be strange if this group of people rushed over crazily with bloodshot eyes. But now, they were so scared that no one dared to make a move. The Luo clan was really hopeless. But at this moment, a whistling sword chi approached Chu Xiu from behind. The sword chi was extremely sinister and carried a gloomy chill. It seemed to be able to tear the air apart. There was no sound at all. If it were not for Chu Xiu's sharp senses, he would not have been able to detect the sword chi. Chu Xiu raised the heavenly demon dance in his hand. Wherever the long saber pointed, demonic chi erupted, directly shattering the sword chi. But at this time, the sword chi contained a chill that flowed into Chu Xiu's body. It actually started to freeze his meridians. Chu Xiu frowned. He formed the lion seal in his hand, and a powerful force dispersed all the different kinds of chi. Only then did he manage to suppress the chill. But at this moment, a whistling wind exploded. On the other side, someone blasted out a punch. Astral chi exploded. The power was also extraordinary. Chu Xiu snorted coldly. He formed the great Vajra seal in his hand and slammed it down. Buddhist light and astral energy exploded and blasted that person away. Beside Chu Xiu, Eunuch Chen held a pitch-black rapier that gave off a deep chill and pointed it at Chu Xiu. On the other side, Li Yuan was also staring coldly at Chu Xiu, his eyes filled with killing intent. Chu Xiu frowned. The Luo clan's people had not made a move, but LV Longji's people had made a move. This was a thorny problem. Based on the exchange just now, Chu Xiu could tell that Eunuch Chen's strength was not weak. There were no mediocre people from the imperial palace, not to mention that he was the personal eunuch supervisor of Crown Prince Lu Longji. It was the same for Li Yuan. Putting aside this person's future, although he had not made a living in Jianghu, he had been trained by Duke Lin's mansion with all their resources since he was a child. He had accumulated considerable strength in the imperial court, and was considered strong among warriors of the same level. Why? Has the Luo clan completely surrendered to the imperial court? Do you need the imperial court to take care of this kind of thing? Chu Xiu said lightly. Before the Luo clan's people could speak, Li Yuan sneered and said, Chu Xiu, don't talk about Jianghu and the imperial court. You were born in the Guanzhong torture room, but you have cooperated with the imperial court. Not only the Eastern Qi imperial court, but also West Chu and Northern Yan. Since the Luo clan has chosen to be on good terms with the crown prince, we can't turn a blind eye to this matter. Hand over Luo Feiheng and leave the Luo clan, then we won't make things difficult for you. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to walk out of the Luo clan's door today. As Li Yuan's voice fell, Nie Donglu also walked out with a smile on his face and said, Brother Li is right. Chu Xiu, you've been involved in too many things, and your hands have stretched too far. There are so many things in Jianghu, and you want to meddle in all of them. This time, I'm afraid you won't get what you want. Nie Donglu had a smile on his face, but his heart was filled with killing intent. Since the last time he attacked Lu Fengxian, he and Chu Xiu had formed an irreconcilable enmity. Originally, Nie Renlong had told Nie Donglu that Chu Xiu was not easy to deal with, and it was best not to make a move without absolute confidence. But today, Chu Xiu made him see an even stronger threat, not only because of Chu Xiu, but also because of others. Today, Chu Xiu and the others could go against the Luo clan for Luo Feiheng. In the future, people like Luo Feiheng and Xie Xiaolu would naturally do the same for Chu Xiu. Whether it was Lu Fengxian or Xie Xiaolu and Luo Feiheng, none of them were easy to deal with. Even the weakest Mo Tianlin had a place in the younger generation of Jianghu. Since these people were Chu Xiu's friends, they were destined to be his enemies in the future. Nie Donglu had enough reason to make a move. Most importantly, Nie Donglu could not understand how a person like Chu Xiu could make friends with people like Lu Fengxian, who were willing to die for him. In terms of friends, Nie Donglu had a lot of them. It was not an exaggeration to say that he had 10 or even 100 times more friends than Chu Xiu. Not to mention Northern Yan, even in Jianghu, Nie Donglu had countless good friends. No matter where he went, he was familiar with many people. But Nie Donglu knew that although he seemed to have a lot of connections, he could not find anyone like the people around Chu Xiu, who would disregard their own interests to help others. Chu Xiu looked at Li Yuan, Nie Donglu, and the others, then turned to Luo Feiheng and smiled helplessly. I think you made a mistake in asking me to help this time. If I hadn't come, it would have been easier for you guys. If Chu Xiu hadn't come this time, Luo Feiheng and Xie Xiaolu's strength would have been enough to kill their way out of the Luo family. It was the same in the original plot. At that time, there was no Chu Xiu, but Xie Xiaolu, Mo Tianlin, and Mo Yezi should have been there. Things went smoothly. But in the end, Chu Xiu did not expect that he would attract so much hatred. The Crown Prince's people and Nie Donglu had appeared. It was even more troublesome than in the original plot. Luo Feiheng waved the blood spear red kite in his hand and raised his eyebrows. So what if more people come? We're going to fight anyway. Let's kill our way out. From the moment Luo Feiheng made the decision to break ties with the Luo family, she was ready to fight to the death. Even if there were more people, she would have been prepared, let alone now. Chu Xiu let out a long sigh and said, Then let's do it. But you're seriously injured now. Just hide at the back. As soon as he finished speaking, the long saber in Chu Xiu's hand flickered with a deep demonic and bloody aura. With a ferocious aura, it slashed down towards Nie Donglio's head. The person Chu Xiu wanted to kill the most was Nie Donglu. At this time, he should kill Nie Donglu the most. He had offended the Crown Prince, LV Longji. Even if he killed the old eunuch and Li Yuan, LV Longji's people would still cause trouble for him in the future. Nie Donglu could be considered Chu Xiu's old enemy. Most importantly, it would be difficult to kill this guy. A gentleman does not stand under a collapsing wall. Nie Donglu was not a gentleman, but he was more careful than a gentleman. Compared to the previously impulsive Xiahou Wujiang, Nie Donglu could be said to be extremely careful. Once there was any sign of trouble, he was guaranteed to be the first to escape. Then he would continuously find trouble for Chu Xiu. It could be said that he was extremely annoying. Therefore, when he saw Nie Donglu again, Chu Xiu's killing intent rose immediately, and he turned to attack him. On the Luo family's side, the Luo family warriors who had been frightened by Chu Xiu saw that Chu Xiu was surrounded by 3 people. They were emboldened, and they turned to attack Xie Xiaolu and the others. Chu Xiu and the others might not be able to defeat them, but could they not defeat the others? Under the siege of the crowd, the people who were about to escape from the Luo family were delayed again. Nie Donglu let out a long laugh. The universe rotated in his hand, and powerful Gang Qi kept spiraling in his hand, resisting Chu Xiu's blade. Although the power of Chu Xiu's blade, which was condensed with powerful devil qi and his own blood qi, was shocking, Nie Donglio's heaven and earth cloud hand could control the universe, and it could attack and defend. At this time, it had already counteracted the power of Chu Xiu's blade. At this time, Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen began to join forces to attack Chu Xiu. The two of them worked well together. In the past, when they were under Crown Prince LV Longji, they had worked together a lot. Eunuch Chen, as LV Longji's personal chief eunuch, was also a great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm. He had often given pointers to Li Yuan and the others. The thin sword in Eunuch Chen's hand was evil and strange, and so was the way he walked. When the sword stabbed out, the Gang Qi was not like that of other great experts at the unity of heaven and man realm, where the sword Qi and sword Gang burst out over 100 feet with astonishing power. Instead, his sword was extremely soft. It looked like a casual sword stab, but it was aimed at the vital parts of the body. The small sword light was extremely condensed, and even Chu Xiu's Gang Qi could not completely defend against it. Li Yuan was good at close combat techniques such as fist and foot. His physical cultivation was not weak, and his martial arts path was open, so he could cooperate perfectly with Eunuch Chen. Facing a pincer attack from the two of them, Chu Xiu took a step forward in an instant. The killing intent around him soared into the sky, and he had already stepped into the selfless killing realm. The heaven demon dance was dyed with a layer of strange blood-red color. The long saber slashed out horizontally, forcing Eunuch Chen to retreat. At this moment, Li Yuan punched out. Chu Xiu's left hand formed the great Vajra wheel seal, and with a loud bang, Li Yuan was sent flying. The powerful force made Li Yuan, who cultivated a body-tempering technique and had a strong physical body, turn pale. Fighting 1 against 3, Chu Xiu had indeed used his powerful martial arts technique to suppress the 3 of them at the beginning of the battle. However, as the battle went on, he felt that his strength was not as strong as he wished. The 3 of them were not simple people. There was no need to talk about eunuch Chun. Chu Xiu could easily kill some weaker unity of heaven and man realm warriors, but he could not kill an expert like eunuch Chun. Li Yuan and Nie Donglu were also considered outstanding existences among warriors of the same level. In a one-on-one battle, they could not win against Chu Xiu. However, under the siege, Chu Xiu was unable to finish them all off in a short period of time. Chapter 447. Chu Xiu was fighting 1 against 3, and one of them was in oneness of heaven and man expert. Although he could not do anything to the 3 of them, the 3 of them could not do anything to Chu Xiu either. This kind of battle result could already be said to be astonishing. Even the gazes of the people present shifted between Chu Xiu, who was fighting, and Ying Bailu. They did not know who was stronger between the two. Of course, it seemed that Ying Bailu was stronger. After all, Ying Bailu was already in the oneness of heaven and man realm, while Chu Xiu was only in the 5 Qis collecting in origin realm. However, the people could also see that Chu Xiu was almost at the peak of the 5 Qis collecting in origin realm. It was only a matter of time before he stepped into the oneness of heaven and man realm. When the 2 of them were almost at the same level, it was unknown who would win. However, in this chaotic battle, Chu Xiu was not defeated even though he was fighting 1 against 3. There was someone who could not hold on anymore. And that was Mo Yezi. After all, Mo Yezi was only a weapon refiner at the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm. If he were to fight a Martial Dao Grandmaster head-on, he would not be able to last long. Even if his 4 magic weapons could form the true martial sword formation, it was still an inanimate object. Its power was completely different from the true martial sword technique performed by the experts of the true martial sect. At this time, he was almost unable to stop Luo Jianyan. Moreover, Luo Jianyan was still in a state of rage. Today, the Luo family had lost both their reputation and their reputation. In fact, it was not uncommon for the major sects and families in Jianghu to betray their masters and ancestors. Every sect had a few traitors. This was a very normal thing. However, no one was like the Luo family. The descendants of the Luo family had destroyed the relics and trump cards left by their ancestors. They simply wanted their family to be destroyed. Of course, that was what Luo Feiheng thought. Luo Jianyan could imagine how the Jianghu would judge the Luo family in the future. Even the Wu County Luo family might become a laughingstock in Jianghu. What's more, the Luo family's formation from Wu Prefecture had been destroyed by Luo Feiheng in front of so many martial artists. If the news got out, would the other forces that had a grudge against the Luo family be tempted to make trouble for them? After all, this could be said to be the Luo family's most declining period. Luo Jianyan felt a headache when he thought about this. Therefore, Luo Jianyan simply stopped thinking and attacked furiously. This time, he must not let Luo Feiheng escape. Under Luo Jianyan's crazy attack, the sword formation formed by the 4 god weapons was already a little unstable. As Luo Jianyan brandished the long sword in his hand, the true martial sword formation began to tremble. In the end, the countless sword astral swords condensed into one, drawing upon the power of the heavens and earth to form a majestic sword astral swords nearly 100 zhang in length. It whistled down and directly smashed into the true martial sword formation. Immediately, a loud sound rang out. Cracks appeared on one of the divine weapons, causing the true martial sword formation to begin to collapse. Seeing that Mo Yezi was about to collapse, Chu Xiu also frowned. Chu Xiu had experienced the strength of a martial Dao Grandmaster once, when Nie Renlong attacked him. It was definitely a power that he could not match. Although Luo Jianyan was much weaker than Nie Renlong, a martial Dao Grandmaster was still a martial Dao Grandmaster. No matter how weak he was still a martial Dao Grandmaster. Chu Xiu was not confident that he could stop Luo Jianyan at this moment. Therefore, at this moment, Chu Xiu did not want to delay any longer. The earth energy around him surged to the extreme, and in an instant, Chu Xiu's eyes became hollow. At this moment, he performed the heaven's sun gazing at air skill to the extreme. Everything around him had condensed into silk threads in Chu Xiu's eyes, dancing and changing rapidly. Amidst the countless silk threads, Chu Xiu's mental energy skyrocketed to the extreme. His figure wandered in the endless fist wind and sword aura. Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen were shocked to discover that the two of them seemed to be feeding Chu Xiu moves at this moment. As soon as they attacked, Chu Xiu had already prepared to dodge in advance. At this moment, they had already attacked with all their might, and they could not retract their moves halfway. This feeling made them extremely depressed, and they had the urge to vomit blood. However, within these few moves, Chu Xiu had completely shaken off Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan's entanglement, and his figure appeared in front of Nie Donglu. In an instant, Nie Donglu felt an extreme sense of danger. Without saying a word, he performed the heaven and earth cloud-reaching hand. Powerful earth energy was condensed by him, one clear and one turbid. The two forces were like a Tai Chi diagram, defending in front of him while he retreated rapidly. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu was prepared to attack with all his might to break the stalemate. How could he let Nie Donglu escape just like that? With a slash of the blade, the force of the blade accurately struck the boundary between the clear and turbid forces of the universe. As if it was a simple move, the Tai Chi diagram suddenly shattered. Chu Xiu's hand formed the external lion seal. In an instant, the sound of Buddha exploded like thunder. The powerful force rang in Nie Donglu's ears, immediately making him feel dizzy. Even if he used all his spiritual qi to suppress it, he could not completely suppress the feeling. This made Nie Donglu feel like vomiting blood. It was this move again. Chu Xiu's external lion seal was similar to the Great Light Temple's lion's roar of 9 transformations. They were both martial arts techniques that could not be used to defeat the enemy in one move, but could not be parried. When used suddenly, it would catch the enemy off guard. Even if the enemy managed to defend in time, it would still have some effect. Chu Xiu took one step at a time. With each step, he formed an external lion seal. The sound of thunder and explosions seemed to be continuous, ringing in Nie Donglu's ears. This made his spiritual qi start to dissipate, and blood flowed uncontrollably from his ears and nose. Seals like the external lion seal, which consumed a lot of energy, were continuously used by Chu Xiu. His consumption was not small. By the time he got close to Nie Donglu, his face was already pale. Seeing Chu Xiu's appearance, Nie Donglu gritted his teeth and decisively stopped retreating. Instead, he gathered all the spiritual qi in his body and slammed his palm down on Chu Xiu. Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen were right behind him. As long as he could hold them off for a moment, Chu Xiu would definitely die. However, before his palm could explode, Chu Xiu's great demonic blood technique had already begun to be used at full force. As the seals in Chu Xiu's hands were performed, boundless demonic qi stirred up his qi and blood. This made Nie Donglu let out a muffled grunt, and a look of shock appeared in his eyes. Previously, Chu Xiu had wasted his spiritual qi and used so many external lion seals to fight Nie Donglu head-on. He had not done it to affect Nie Donglu's attacks, but to directly use the external lion seal to shake Nie Donglu until he bled, so that his body would no longer be like an iron bucket. Only then would he be able to use the great demonic blood technique to its fullest. Actually, Nie Donglu knew about the great demonic blood technique. After all, he had participated in the great battle on Floating Jade Mountain. However, Nie Donglu had not expected the power of the great demonic blood technique to be so terrifying. It was so terrifying that he could not suppress it even with all the spiritual qi in his body. Now, Nie Donglu finally understood why Han Ting from the Sword Hut had only been willing to take out the blood-killing blade, and not the great demonic blood technique. This was not because the Sword Hut was stingy, but because this technique was truly evil to the extreme. Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen, who were behind him, had already attacked again. There was only one move left for Chu Xiu to make his move. With a wave of one hand, boundless demonic qi mixed with qi and blood was extracted from Nie Donglu's body. At the same time, the qi and blood in Chu Xiu's body also erupted. The two forces of qi and blood merged into one, becoming an evil blade completely condensed from blood. It slashed down on Nie Donglio's head. Any spiritual qi or defense was shattered by the blood blade. After all, Nie Donglio's strength was not ordinary. Even if Chu Xiu used the great demonic blood technique, he would not be able to extract all the qi and blood in his body. However, Nie Donglu did not have enough qi and blood. Chu Xiu used his own qi and blood to make up for it. After all, the blood-killing blade only consumed qi and blood. No matter whose qi and blood it was, the stronger the better. Because they had the same source of power, Nie Donglio's spiritual qi defense was reduced to nothing under the blood-killing blade. However, Nie Donglio's reaction was fast. After noticing the characteristics of the blood-killing blade, he did not choose to passively defend. Instead, he gathered all the spiritual qi around him and stirred the world. The explosive spiritual qi affected the surrounding spiritual qi of the world, forming a cyclone in front of him. However, although the cyclone looked extraordinary, it was still shattered by Chu Xiu's evil blood-killing blade. There was a loud bang, and blood splattered everywhere. Nie Donglu was sent flying. He clutched a hideous wound on his chest and spat out blood. His eyes were filled with shock. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. As expected, he still could not kill Nie Donglu at this time. Furthermore, he did not have the chance to kill Nie Donglu now. Behind him, Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen had joined forces to attack. One's fist force was extremely powerful, while the other's sword force was ruthless and evil. The two attacks were already upon him. Even if Chu Xiu used Heaven's Sun gazing at air, he would not be able to dodge completely. He could see the trajectory of the opponent's attack, but he was too fast to dodge. Therefore, in that instant, Chu Xiu held the Dugu seal in his hand and condensed all the spiritual qi in his body into one. He was as immovable as a mountain, invincible. There was a violent explosion of spiritual qi, and Chu Xiu's figure was sent flying. A stream of blood flowed down the corner of his mouth. In a hurry to defend, even Chu Xiu's Dugu seal could not block the attacks of these two. However, for the current Chu Xiu, it was enough. Kill! With a loud shout, Chu Xiu took the lead and fled out of the Luo family. Behind him, Luo Feiheng and the other two also erupted with their strongest power. They attacked directly, killing the Luo family warriors in front of them and fleeing together. Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen looked at each other and did not continue to attack. They only wanted to find trouble with Chu Xiu. It was not an irreconcilable hatred. At this time, since Chu Xiu had already escaped, they naturally did not have to waste their energy to chase after him. Of course, based on the power that Chu Xiu had displayed just now, after Nie Donglu was seriously injured, they really did not dare to chase after him. Chapter 448. Mo Yezi let out a sigh of relief when Chu Xiu and the others successfully escaped. He retreated as he fought and left the Luo residence. Mo Yezi was actually quite confident. He knew that even if he lost, Luo Junyan would not kill him. In the Jianghu, there were some people that most martial artists didn't want to offend. For example, the West Chu miracle doctor angering Yama Feng Buping. Although he had a strange temper, he didn't want to offend anyone because he didn't know when he would need someone's help. There were also array masters, divination grandmasters, and so on. Although these people were not as good as ordinary martial artists in terms of combat power, they could be of great help to martial artists in the aspect they specialized in. From this, they could make terrifying connections. Mo Yezi was one such grandmaster in smithing. Ever since he stepped into this realm, he had forged countless weapons for others, including countless precious weapons and divine weapons. All of these connections were enough to make Luo Junyan feel apprehensive. Although Luo Junyan did not want to chase after Mo Yezi, he did not want Luo Feiheng and the others to escape the Luo residence. But before he could chase after them, a Luo family disciple shouted anxiously, "Ancestor! If we don't suppress the array in the ancestral hall, the entire ancestral hall will collapse." Luo Junyan glared at the direction Luo Feiheng and the others escaped in. He had no choice but to turn around and run towards the ancestral hall. At this time, Luo Feiheng and the others had escaped more than 10 miles away. When they saw that no one was chasing after them, they stopped and began to recover their injuries and internal energy. Mo Tianlin looked at Luo Feiheng and teased. You are now homeless. Where do you plan to go from now on? But Eastern Qi, I advise you not to stay here. You were really ruthless this time. I'm afraid that from now on, the Luo family will not rest until you are dead. Mo Yezi said, Little Feihong, it's not a big deal if you want to stay in Eastern Qi. My Mirror Lake Manor may not have much power, but I do have some influence in Jianghu. If I take you in, even Luo Junian won't dare to say anything. At the side, Xie Xiaolu also said, That's right. Senior Mo has a place for you. And so does our World Alliance. Brother Chu's Guanzhong torture room is also a good place to go. Luo Junian can only flaunt his power in the Luo clan, but no one will listen to him anywhere else. Luo Feiheng shook his head and said, I appreciate everyone's good intentions, but I've troubled you enough this time. I already have a plan for the future. At this point, Luo Feiheng's eyes flickered coldly and said, The Luo clan thinks that they can revive the Luo clan by relying on a marriage alliance and a piece of trash like Luo Feiyun. Now, I'll show the Luo clan that I alone will surpass the entire Luo clan. Mo Tianlin and the others did not speak. They thought that Luo Feiheng said those words out of anger. After all, although the Luo family was now in decline, they still had some foundation. Even if Luo Feiheng had stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, he was still alone after all. In terms of foundation, he could not compare with the Luo family. However, only Chu Xiu knew that if the situation did not change too much, Luo Feiheng's future would surprise many people. Luo Feiheng turned to Mo Yezi and Chu Xiu and said, Senior Mo, Brother Chu, I'd like to borrow something from you. What is it? Luo Feiheng said in a deep voice, Weapons and reputation. I want to develop my forces in the dark, but I have nothing at the moment, so I need weapons as a lure. However, Senior Mo, don't worry. I only need a small number of weapons in the beginning. Later on, I will naturally take out the materials and price to buy weapons from the Mirror Lake Manor. Mo Yezi waved his hand and said, It's a small matter. My Mirror Lake Manor may not have many things, but it has a lot of weapons. If you want divine weapons, it might take some effort. However, there are some precious weapons. I and the others in the Mirror Lake Manor have countless precious weapons. You can take as many as you want. Luo Feiheng shook his head and said, This is a different matter. We still have to follow the rules of the Jianghu. After saying that, Luo Feiheng looked at Chu Xiu and said, As for Brother Chu, I want to borrow your reputation. Chu Xiu subconsciously rubbed his chin. He seemed to know what Luo Feiheng wanted to do, so he asked, The 9-branch division? Luo Feiheng nodded and said, That's right. Although I have some reputation in the Jianghu, it's not as good as Brother Chu. Moreover, I know that I'm a woman, so I'm naturally weak. Brother Chu, when you said that we should work together to establish the 9-branch division, I only thought it was interesting. But now, I can feel the potential of the 9-branch division. Therefore, I want to borrow the reputation of the 9-branch division and Brother Chu to secretly recruit some people. If Brother Chu is at ease, then lend me your reputation. I dare say that within 3 years, I can make the 9-branch division have a heaven and earth turning change in both numbers and power. After saying that, Luo Feiheng raised her head. Her charming face revealed a trace of confidence and pride. This made Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin feel a bit unfamiliar. This was because they had never seen this side of Luo Feiheng. In the past, they knew that Luo Feiheng was very strong, but that was all. More than that, they felt that Luo Feiheng was a bit eccentric. As a woman, her actions were more manly than a man's. In the past, when they went to the brothel to drink, Luo Feiheng, as a woman, would steal women with them. She was even more popular than them. Therefore, Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin had always thought that Luo Feiheng was a maverick who loved women and pleasure. This kind of habit was very similar to Mo Tianlin. This was also the reason why Mo Tianlin and Luo Feiheng could become good friends. However, Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin didn't know that people had two sides. When Luo Feiheng became serious, her methods and abilities would definitely surpass everyone's imagination. Chu Xiu threw the 9-dragon coin in his hand to Luo Feiheng and smiled. I'll wait for that day. Towards Luo Feiheng, Chu Xiu was very confident. In the original storyline, Luo Feiheng was also chased by the Luo clan. In the end, she truly started from scratch and established the Bu Air Palace, developing it into a peak power in the underworld. It was dozens of times stronger than the previous Luo clan. And now, Luo Feiheng's starting point was higher than in the previous life. If there were no accidents, the speed of her rise would also be faster than in the previous life. Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin didn't say much. The 9-branch division was originally proposed by Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu said that the 9-branch division didn't have a leader. As Chu Xiu's strength became stronger and his reputation in the underworld grew, Xie Xiaolu, Mo Tianlin, and the others subconsciously treated Chu Xiu as their leader. Although they didn't say it explicitly, it could be seen from some details and attitudes. In the underworld, strength was still the most important thing. Although they had a good relationship, strength was strength. As long as one was a martial artist, they would subconsciously take this as their priority. Since Luo Feiheng had already made her decision, Chu Xiu and the others didn't say anything else. They chatted for a while more before leaving. In fact, the one who should feel the most melancholy was Mo Tianlin. Offending the Luo clan was a small matter for Chu Xiu and Xie Xiaolu, but for Mo Tianlin, the pressure from his clan would probably be huge. However, no one could help him with this. Only Mo Tianlin could bear it himself. After Chu Xiu left, he didn't return to Guanzhong. Instead, he first found a place to recuperate in Eastern Qi. The Luo clan's matter was resolved, but his own grudge was not resolved. Nie Donglu was a slippery fellow. Chu Xiu had the strength to kill him, but he didn't have the opportunity to do so. However, this time, Crown Prince LV Longji's subordinates, Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan, attacked him. Chu Xiu didn't intend to let this matter go. For a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too late. If Chu Xiu wanted to take revenge, it would depend on his mood and the opportunity. Chu Xiu wasn't a magnanimous person. He didn't intend to let this matter rest. If others knew that Chu Xiu dared to take revenge on the Crown Prince of Eastern Qi in Eastern Qi's territory, they would definitely think that Chu Xiu was crazy. However, sometimes things had to be looked at from another angle. So what if he was the Crown Prince of Eastern Qi? Before he became the emperor, the Crown Prince was still the Crown Prince. Even in the original plot, the seemingly mediocre emperor of Eastern Qi, Lu Haochang, was still alive. At the very least, when Chu Xiu transmigrated, Lu Longji was still the Crown Prince. Moreover, in the land of Eastern Qi, there were many people who wanted to cause trouble for the Crown Prince. Chu Xiu was very good at taking advantage of the situation. As for whose situation he could take advantage of, the only person Chu Xiu was familiar with in the Eastern Qi imperial family was the second prince, Lu Longguang. Chu Xiu believed that as long as he made an appearance, it would be easy to borrow this person's power. Moreover, Chu Xiu had another thought in mind, and that was to seize Li Yuan's good fortune. Right now, Li Yuan wasn't very eye-catching in the Eastern Qi imperial court. He was just a small official in Eastern Qi. Even under the Crown Prince Lu Longji, he was the Crown Prince's confidant, but his status couldn't be compared to Lu Longji's personal eunuch, Chen Do. If the current Li Yuan were to be evaluated by others, he would at most be someone with decent strength and ability. There was nothing outstanding about him. The only thing that allowed Li Yuan to soar into the sky and become the North Garrison King of Eastern Qi was the good fortune inheritance that he had obtained. Chu Xiu didn't know the exact time when Li Yuan obtained the inheritance, but in the original plot, Chu Xiu knew the approximate time and place. If he killed Li Yuan and waited at that place, would he be able to obtain the good fortune and inheritance on Li Yuan's behalf? This kind of thing was a little uncertain, but in any case, the first step was to kill Li Yuan. Then Chu Xiu would go to that place to try his luck and see if he could obtain the inheritance that belonged to Li Yuan. After the plan was made, Chu Xiu recuperated for half a month. When his injuries had completely recovered to their peak, he went straight to Daliang city of Eastern Qi to look for the second prince, Lu Longguang. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.